Well, hypothetically, we're live. We'll see how long that stays true. So, welcome to my medieval sewing party. I am the creative Contessa, for those who don't know what the hell they're watching. I am attired in 1480s Florentine attire, and we are here in the wilds of the 15th century, enjoying a lovely sewing party on turkey rugs, even though all you can all see is the dirty ground behind us, but I swear my butt is on a turkey rug. And today I'm going to be working on to finish, hopefully pronto, because I need to wear it in like 2 days, my Not-A-Hennin, the typical conical medieval princess hat that I shall be wearing to a lovely deed of arms by the lake. And right now I am at the stage where I am actually attaching all of the various pieces that will reinforce the edges, and then I'm actually going to close it up and turn it into a cone, and you can actually get an idea of the cone shape here, if you see. Yep. So let me just get the live chat. I don't know why it always goes with top messages only. That's kind of silly. It's like I don't want to see only the most popular messages. I don't even know what that means. Right. So I am in the process of actually using a very high-tech piece of equipment, a paper clip, to drive holes in the edges in order to attach the reinforcing band. Right, so here's the one reinforcing band that I've attached. Here's some other pieces I've cut up to attach to also reinforce. And this is the part that's going to be going around my head. So this is the part that's going to be right around in contact with my skin around my forehead. And so on the original bishop's mitres that have survived, they have a reinforcing band of vellum around the forehead part and not wire, because wire would be very uncomfortable to have that pressing into your head. So the reinforcement around the lower edge is therefore another strip of vellum, as you can see here. Good afternoon, Susan. Thank you for joining us. We are at Dalwhinnie, if you've been wondering about Dalwhinnie. I have access to my things briefly because we popped through Hattiesburg on the way here, and I fished out one of my favorite tapestries that I haven't seen in 4 years. Yeah. So Susan, first off, how's the sound? How's the picture quality? Yeah, welcome to those just joining my live stream. Today I'm going to be working on making a so-called, what many of you might think of as a medieval princess hat. Some of you also erroneously think of it as a hennin, but that is not what they were called in the 15th century when they were in fashion. That is the conical hat. Looks like this. They were referred to in English as turrets or mitres, or sometimes horns. And in French, they were called an haut à tour or a grande corne. Right. Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that confirmation, Susan. It's always good to know that people can actually hear me. Oh, let's see. Oh, I see. I took the needle off and I think I left it up in the chamber. Oh, well, not using that needle then. Yeah, I started sewing this upstairs because in our chamber, and I desperately wanted to do this live stream from my beautiful bed chamber in the inn here at Dalwhinnie, but unfortunately there is zero reception there. The reception is so spotty as to make you feel like you're in the 1990s again. So no sewing party from there. So we found this one spot where there is good reception, and we have set up here on the ground. Yeah, which works okay for now. It is actually cold here in Alabama, which is shocking. I think we're both shocked.
Shocked.
We're shocked. And so I'm very, very comfortable in my wool gamora. Oh, Gorani, thank you for that confirmation. Villa Vendetta, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining, everyone. I know it's been a while since I've done a sewing party, and I apologize for that. We've been doing a lot of traveling, as some of you know, and some of that traveling allowed me to get an occasional sewing party in, and then other traveling did not. And the last day when I planned to do a whole day of sewing parties on our cruise coming back from Spain up to Southampton, we crossed the Bay of Biscay in a named storm. Benjamin was the storm's name. Isn't that sweet? And we had gusts up to force 10 and force 11, and the seas were so high that we have swells of 8 meters and more, and the ship was rising up and slamming down into the water. So I was not going to do anything with a pointy object that day on the ship. wasn't happening. So yeah, that's why that planned sewing party and also the medieval story time got canceled, because I was also not going to read on seas that high. It just wasn't going to happen. Yeah. Ed, welcome to my medieval sewing party. I do, among many things, medieval living history, and I am at the beginning of an immersive 15th century event, and we're here by ourselves, thankfully. We're enjoying this peaceful time to ourselves, and we are getting some sewing in. I am working on making a 15th century headdress that modern people, since the Victorians, refer to as a mitre, but in the 15th century would have been called a turret or a horn or a mitre. Yeah. Yeah, so those who might not be able to watch this stream right now all the way through, no problem. As soon as we're done, it will post as a recording and you can watch it and rewatch it to your heart's content, everyone. No problem. Lucy Cat, welcome. Yeah, so I'm actually right now, to bring everyone up to speed, I'm in the process of threading and waxing a needle. I'm waxing it with my bosom buddies wax, because my little wax, I took it out and it went somewhere. We'll find it later. So this is beeswax. Smells so good. This is beeswax, and I'm using linen thread. And before you do anything with linen thread, you want to literally drag the thread through the wax. Now, this is only if you're hand sewing. If you're machine sewing, don't do this. You'll ruin your sewing machine. The wax will not play well with all of that machinery. But if you're hand sewing, you always want to wax your thread. And the reason we wax our thread when we are hand sewing is because you draw the needle and the thread again and again and again, so the thread goes through and through and through, and it will start to fray. The wax strengthens it, it makes it more slippery, and it prevents it from knotting on itself. So that is why we wax our thread. And I'm just now preparing my needle and thread in order to actually, this is the frame for the headdress I'm going to be making, the Not-A-Hennin, the turret. And the holes are already poked. I've already poked the holes through, and so now I'm going to actually stitch this line down on this side the way I've already stitched that line down. And this is reinforcement for the part that goes around my head. So that is where we are in this process. Squasley, welcome. Oh, Lucy Cat, thank you so much for getting the word out. That's pretty awesome. There are no kitties at Decameron anymore, are there? We haven't seen any kitties. No, there's been I'm not certain if I call it a die-off, but the chickens, it's a die-off. So I heard all the chickens. There were chickens. There's only one left. The rest of them got taken by hawks, coyotes, raccoons, and other assorted wildlife that is here. There is, however, one chicken left, and she likes to go into the bottom floor of the Bella and poop. Yeah, she does. She likes to do that. And there did used to be kitties too. I don't know where the kitties went. There used to be goats. They went away a while ago with when one set of people who lived here moved out. There used to be ducks. I don't know where they went. There used to be geese. I don't know where they went. Maybe it's not good to be an animal at Dalwhinnie. I'm kind of getting that impression now. Be a human, that's fine. But maybe don't be anything else and be here. Yeah. So for those who haven't worked with vellum, this is goatskin vellum, and you can tell that. You can actually see the pattern from the fur, the goat's fur here. Goatskin vellum is heavier than sheepskin vellum, and it's the perfect weight for a hat because it's light and it's flexible, but it is still pretty. It's got a good body to it. You must I always recommend that you pre-poke your holes, puncture your holes in advance, which I did with this really high-tech device called a safety pin. You should use an awl. I didn't bring an awl with me. That's my fault. So safety pin it is. Works really well. But you pre-poke your holes, and the holes should more or less line up on the two layers. It doesn't have to be perfect, but kind of close. And then you just basically stitch through it like you were doing, just like you were doing fabric, except it's thicker, right? So goes pretty quickly once you get the holes done. And if you are working with, say, a friend or a spouse, you could have one person poke the holes while you prepare something else, because the hole poking part is a pretty low-tech, low-skill job. You can outsource your hole poking if you need to. Hello, Arosha. Are you from IRN, from Iran? That would be pretty cool. If you're tuning in from Iran, that's pretty neat. I love Persia. I love Persian food. I love Persian history. Historical Persian clothing is so beautiful. Oh my goodness. Yeah, like especially 15th, 16th century Persian clothes for men and women. So elegant, such beautiful colors, really flirty, nice long sleeves. I like anything that has lots of fabric in it. So, yeah. Hello, I'm not Nisa official. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So for those who are just now joining, I am making a 15th century headdress, the iconic 15th century headdress from Europe, from Western Europe. Many of you might call it a hennin, but that's the wrong term for it. So don't call it that. Teach other people that it is called a mitre or a turret. Turret is probably more common, actually. I hate sewing with linen thread so much. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. This linen thread especially, because it's very coarsely woven, and it tends to shred even when you wax it, like this just did. Oh well. I want to use it though. This is the thread I'm talking about. I want to use it though because I have it and I don't believe in wasting. So I'm using it on the inside, this thread, this really coarsely spun linen thread on the inside, because no one's going to see it and it won't be subject to very much in the way of wear and tear. So I'm less concerned about that. I would not use this for seams though, because it would definitely not last. Hello, Bob. Welcome from Arkansas. We are currently in Alabama, which many of you are probably scratching your heads and saying, weren't you just in Europe? Yes, I was. I was just in Europe. And before that, I was in Korea. And then I was in Asia and other parts of Asia. I get around a lot. What can we say? Should I find another name for it than Not-A-Hennin? I coined the term Not-A-Hennin because it allowed people to understand and visualize the object on which I'm working, because the term hennin is so ubiquitous in costuming circles and even in living history circles. But I added the term not-a to also convey the idea that it is in fact not the correct term. So the correct term is actually a turret. If you want to actually use the historically accurate term from the era in which this headdress existed, turret seems to be the most common. It seems also these kinds of pointed tall headdresses for ladies also seem to have been called mitres. And we can tell that because we find entries in expense accounts from the 15th century, from wills, from inventories that are for women, not for men, not for women of the clergy, not for men of the clergy. And they talk about the materials that they need for their turrets. And in fact, there is an expense account entry from Margaret of Denmark, the Queen of Scotland, in the 1470s. And there are multiple entries for turratis in 15th century Scots, turrets. And it talks about the materials for them. It talks about silk and satin. All of hers seem to have been black, which, if you look at the portraits, is the primary color that you see. If you look at miniatures from the 15th century, illuminations and whatnot, then they'll come in all kinds of crazy colors and all kinds of ornamentation. But I really have to wonder to myself, after looking at all these portraits versus all of these illuminations of fantasy 15th century women, if the portraits are giving us the more accurate representation that they were in fact mostly black with embroidery on them, and that all of those brightly colored ones you see in fantasy adventures from the 15th century that are illuminated, if those are just fantasy versions. So yeah, I'm leaning more and more towards that. And I know many of you have made these amazing turrets, these Not-A-Hennins in fantastic colors, based on the idea that those illuminated miniatures are accurate representations of actual clothing. But the reality is that most of those illuminated miniatures are not accurate representations of historical garments. They are representations of an artist's imagination of how the characters in a fictitious story dressed. So yeah, the dangers of art history. And I do plan on doing a live stream where we actually go through a bunch of pieces of art, and I will explain to you how to read the art for clothing, and we will discuss which features, which elements are in fact not real. So that is a planned live stream for the future. Once I return to the land of the morning calm, to the land of Joseon, then we will talk about. I'll actually put together a presentation, a PowerPoint, and we'll look at the visual record together. And then I'll give you the tools you need in order to look at medieval art and or any historical art really, and ascertain whether that's a real person or a fantasy person. And whether that's real clothing or more likely a costume, what 15th century people would have in fact viewed as a costume. Yeah, Patrick, welcome. Thank you for joining. Oh, sure. Suje Mem, thank you. Or Sugar Hill Meme, I don't know. I sometimes it's hard to tell what language the screen names are written in. Thank you for that lovely compliment. Appreciate it. Do I make art on Jesus? I think I understand what you're saying. I don't do religious artwork, so no. I do have a member of my community, though, one of my very generous channel members who actually does medieval. She does medieval monastic reenactment, and is researching medieval monastic life and medieval monastic clothing, especially for women. So. Yes, you do. Yes, she's fantastic. Han, she's really excellent. And if you're there, Han, hello, thank you for supporting my channel. Yeah, she's doing all kinds of research into medieval monastic life, especially as it affects as it was for women. And she has found some really interesting things. She's been recreating the clothing of women who belong to monastic communities, and
my patron saint is she was an Orthodox Christian in Russia in the 1300s, I think. I'll have to double check.
Let's see. Hello, Missy Juju, welcome. Patrick, I appreciate that compliment. I'm not certain I think of myself as talented. I think of myself as enthusiastic. What is my head covering made of? So this is this is the frame. This will be on the inside. The outside is going to be silk. On the lining and the shell will be silk. This is goatskin vellum. So vellum, for those who don't know, is basically a skin that has been stretched and scraped and dried, and it is also has been used historically as writing material. In lieu of paper, you would use vellum, which just lasts so much longer than paper does, but is also intensely more expensive and harder to work with. I'm not certain if I would consider myself I don't know. Am I an artist? I don't know. I'm not certain that some of those things are so easy to define. I enjoy a great number of arts and crafts, both handwork and of course performance arts such as dance, but I don't know if I would consider myself an artist. It's an interesting question. Let me see. The one I'm wearing, this. Is this what you're talking about? This is called a reta. This is a second half of the 15th century headpiece. It's basically like a little net. It's like a kufia, a coif made out of net, and it was worn by ladies of all ranks and statures sort of across the second half of the 15th century, across northern Italy, taking on different forms. This is the Florentine version, and this one is actually made of finger loop braided silk that I basically did a whole bunch of finger loop braiding, and then I put it together in this configuration, and I plan on doing a Zoom workshop on making this over the winter. I've just got to get I have to coagulate my feces and actually schedule it and post the class on my website, thecreativecontessa.com. You'll be able to see the workshops will be advertised through there and can be registered. You can sign up for them through my website, thecreativecontessa.com. I haven't posted it yet though, so it's not there yet. So. I am originally from the United States, but I have spent most of my adult life not living in the United States. So which country are you from is actually a complicated question for me. Usually when people ask where you're from, they mean where do you live, but sometimes they mean where were you born? Sometimes they mean where did you grow up? Those can be very interesting and complex questions sometimes. Okay, Gorani, thank you for joining. Chat with you later. Yeah, so my art, I'm wearing a lot of my art. If you consider clothing, making clothing an art. This, for example, I made entirely myself. I patterned myself. I sewed entirely by hand. I decorated myself. So I do a lot of textile arts. And if you check out the channel that you're now watching, everyone, there's plenty of recordings, full, really nice polished videos on how to make various things. And there's an entire 2-hour video on making exactly this dress that I'm wearing right now. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out later after the live stream, maybe. Patrick, my passport definitely says that I'm American. So does my birth certificate, 100%. What's the painting? So this is a tapestry. And that is a tapestry from the court of Burgundy. And that one is, if I recall correctly, that one is depicting Alexander the Great on some of his adventures, even though they all look like they're 15th century Burgundians. And that's why I try to tell people that art is dangerous. You have to understand the story it's telling before you decide whether it's really medieval people or not. And that's not, that's someone from antiquity. It's a semi-legendary historical character from antiquity. So yeah, that's one of the lesser known tapestries to survive from the 15th century. Most people are familiar with the unicorn tapestries, the various unicorn tapestries. They're familiar with the tapestries there's early 16th century ones that are pretty common, but this one I was really happy to find that reproduction because it's not a very common one and it's very hard to get. So I was very happy with that. So yeah, so I am just now rethreading my needle and I'm going to wax this thread too. You can see I have now attached this band along here. So now it's reinforced here. This is the part, so this is a cone, right? And it will be a cone. It's not a cone now, it will be a cone. See, cone. And this is the part that goes around the circumference of my head. And so this part, especially through the fabric that will cover it, is going to come in contact with my skin and probably with sweat. And so there's a reinforcing band that goes along the bottom, and that's what we're currently in the process of attaching. And we know that this was a technique they used because we have some extant bishop's miters from the 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries, and they have this reinforcing band around the bottom. So it makes total sense. You don't want to use something like wire to reinforce the part that goes right around your forehead. That would be extremely uncomfortable. Where did I learn all of this? That is a good question. I have taught myself mostly. I'm very avid researcher. I enjoy reading dusty, dead manuscripts, sometimes in dead languages, and learning the information that they have. So I've read wills and inventories, expense accounts, chronicles that talk about clothing. I've examined hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of pieces of art. I have read legislation and laws from the era that talks about clothing. I've examined extant garments in museums to see about the kind of techniques that are used to put these things together. So for the most part, I'm self-taught. I've collaborated occasionally with fellow fashion history experts, and we kind of teach each other and share knowledge. But the vast majority of the knowledge I have is knowledge I've acquired through my own research journey over decades of being fascinated by historical garments. Yeah, I do read. In my original life, in my former life, I was a professional translator, and that was before the machines ate translation as a skill. I was actually a Romance language expert, and so Latin is not hard. I didn't actually ever study Latin, but medieval Latin is so close to a lot of the Romance languages, because medieval Latin is not classical Latin, that I can get by in medieval Latin. But a lot of the manuscripts I'm reading are not written in Latin. They're written in 15th century English or 15th century French or 15th century German. Some wills are written in Latin, but not as many as you might think. And so, yeah, I actually have a fairly decent grasp. I have enough of a grasp of medieval Latin to be able to get by with a little help from a dictionary. But yeah, this is beeswax. So when you wax your thread, and you should wax your thread if you're hand sewing every time, beeswax for the win. I just love the smell of beeswax. I smell something burning. Do you smell something burning? Is it something that's supposed to be burning is the important question. Well, we smell something burning, and we're just hoping that it's a controlled burn. Yeah. Let me see. What do you think of East Asia fabric and clothes? Well, Blue Flamer, I actually live sort of more or less in Korea and have spent 8 of the last 11 years in Korea. And one of my areas of expertise is in fact historical Korean clothing. One of my growing areas of expertise, one of my areas of research, growing expertise, but for certain research at this point, is historical Korean clothing. And I love historical Asian clothing. There's not many people's historical clothing that I don't love, I'll be honest. It's all beautiful. And for certain, Korea has really gorgeous garments. And so, yeah, I think quite highly of a lot of historical Asian garments. I'm particularly fond of Tang Dynasty China's clothing. I love Heian Japanese clothing. Heian Japanese garments, oh, chef's kiss on elegance. 0 out of 10 for convenience in moving around, but chef's kiss on convenience or on beauty. I really, in terms of historical Korean fashion eras, I really like the 17th century and the 18th century in Korea. I have developed a new appreciation for 16th century Korean garments, even though they're not normally my aesthetic, being massively voluminous and not terribly fitted in the most top layer jogori. I love Sheila era clothing in Korea. That's sort of the 5th through 9th century, before the Tang Dynasty became the main fashion style in Sheila. So yeah, I love historical Korean fabrics. They are beautiful. Before all those stupid moralizing Neo-Confucian laws were passed that literally killed the textile industry in Korea because they outlawed all those beautiful fabrics, and people forgot how to weave beautiful fabrics in Joseon, Korea. They literally lost the technique because they had to be modest the way Konfutsue prescribed people to be, well, the way they interpreted him as saying they needed to be. And so, yeah, that's why everything, the pottery gets simple, the clothing gets simple, the fabrics get simple in the Joseon dynasty, because they passed laws against weaving the beautiful fabrics that they used to actually weave and export. Yeah. I mean, yeah, so the comment is the Korean fashion industry has thrived on slave labor for 1,000 or more years. Depends on how you define slave labor, and it's not as easy to define. You can't just can't toss a word like slave around without context, because that word does not mean the same thing in all places and all times at all. And people tend to use it as this blanket situation for some species of either under-remunerated, compelled, or forced labor, but there are different ways that you can compel and force labor. And in Korea is not a monolith historically. The Sheila dynasty had a completely different set of laws and strictures than the Goryeo dynasty, and the Joseon dynasty really changes a lot, especially for women, and especially when it comes to slave labor. So the majority of people making the garments in Joseon dynasty were not, however, slaves. They just weren't. It was a skilled profession. Now they certainly had slave labor to help in the shops, but you also had tailors and whatnot who were actually government employees. They had a massive to fit for all the bureaucrats for their clothing, for the government employees, and for the royal family. They actually had an entire government department for clothing, which was, yes, occupied by some slave labor, but also by government employees who were actually received a salary and, had benefits and whatnot, depending on the era of the Joseon dynasty. Blue Flamer, welcome to my live stream. What about Southeast Asia? So I have traveled in and around Vietnam and Thailand, and I love I love the elegance of historical Thai garments. There's a simplicity to them. My Thai friends, however, are not very interested in their own historical garments. They prefer European historical garments because Thai clothing tends to be relatively simple. There's not a great deal of, historically speaking, it's not voluminous in fabric. The clothes tend to be, because it's hot, it's a tropical country. The women actually are going topless for much of Thailand's history. And so a lot of my Thai friends actually do medieval living history, not Thai, European medieval living history, not Thai medieval living history. They prefer European or Japanese or Korean historical fashions and armor to Thai. I think it's beautiful though. I do love the the traditionally woven Thai silks. They're really beautiful. And I do love the aesthetic of medieval Thai architecture. I think it's just gorgeous, especially the kind of timber framing that they did with all the teak and the polished wooden floors. I really love those spaces. And they're super comfortable. I've been in some restored 15th century Thai palace buildings up in Chiang Rai. And even though it was hot and humid outside, inside this throne hall, which was actually, it wasn't walled off, but the way the ceiling was built steeply gabled, it actually protected it. It created this kind of force field against the external elements. And so it was cool and shady on the inside when it was hot and humid as hell on the outside. That was very interesting. Yeah. How can we choose a good fabric? Oh goodness, how to choose good fabric. So short of doing a burn test on fabric to make sure it's actually the fibers you think it is, which by the way, don't do burn tests inside of fabric stores. You'll probably get arrested for arson. Short of doing a burn test, and there's ways you can burn little samples of fabric and smell it and feel the ashes to determine what kind of fiber content it is. It can be really, you have to just develop a feel for quality fabric. What you're looking for generally is it to be finely woven. It should be dense. The fibers should be evenly spaced, so there shouldn't be big slubs, big like chunks in the threads in the weave, unless you're talking about Dupioni. But we can talk about Dupioni later about whether that's a good fabric to use or not in general. So yeah, that's the deal with fabric in general. Is you want something that's tightly woven, you want something that's finely woven. When you gently rub fabric between your thumb and your forefinger, you should be able to tell if it's going to resist rubbing abrasion damage, right? You can kind of tell already if it's starting to fluff out by just a little bit of rubbing. That's not a good quality fabric, and you should put it back because that means it was woven with short staple fibers, and therefore it's going to wear out much more quickly than something woven of long staple. And long staple means that the initial threads used to spin the yarn, the thread, the fibers used to spin the thread were longer, and so you get more of a consistent strength along the length of the thread. Or if it's shorter and they had to patch in shorter pieces more frequently. Long staple means it's going to last longer. Short staple means it's not. Yeah. Yeah. Queen Circuit of Thailand died on Sunday. Oh gosh, I didn't hear. I'm completely out of the news cycle. I spent 30 hours traveling from Germany to 2 days traveling from Germany to here in Alabama, and I really fell out of the news cycle. So I'm really sad to hear that, Susan. That Queen Circuit died. Dupioni and Saga Datura. I don't mean to crit. I'm not so. Dupioni, there's some debate about whether Dupioni would have been historically available in medieval Europe, and I'm not going to get into that debate. But Dupioni it's not as long lasting a silk. It's not as resistant to rubbing and abrasion as other weaves of silk. So that's not a judgment on my part. That's not a value judgment or a moral judgment. It's a judgment of practicality and longevity. But that's also why Dupioni tends to be not very expensive relative to other silks, say like Duchess satin, right? Because it is not as hard wearing Yeah, so no criticism for those of you who have used Dupioni to make your garments. I am definitely not criticizing you. Just that, you know, it comes with its challenges. And there is some debate about whether Dupioni was a fabric that would have been or that was available in medieval Europe. I stopped using Dupioni a while ago just because it doesn't last very long with me. I'm very hard wearing on my garments. I dance a lot and I take long walks in my medieval clothes and I sew things and I do finger loop braiding and sometimes I even cook in my medieval clothes. And sometimes I set up camp in my medieval clothes. So I'm hard on my medieval clothes. So I really shouldn't start off with a garment that is, the garment shouldn't start off with fabric that is going to wear more quickly. But that's just me, and I know me, so there it is. In medieval Europe, there was feces everywhere. So medieval myth busting time. Okay, so medieval Europe, like modern Europe, was not a monolith, and the 1,000 years that is the Middle Ages was not a monolith. So it really, whether you would encounter fecal matter in your city and commonly would depend on the specific city in which you lived and the time in which you lived. There were cities in various places in medieval Europe that were so clean that you could have licked the streets. And I'm not exaggerating. Ragusa was one of them. Now called Dubrovnik. It had periods where it was one of these shining cities, these model cities. It has great sewage. The streets were all marble, or
wants their sewage to be great.
Yeah, exactly. You want great sewage. You definitely
Sewage great again.
Yes, make sewage great again, and not in quantity. Yeah. So there were polities in various parts of medieval Europe where you would be much less likely to encounter fecal matter in the streets. However, carts were drawn by beasts of burden, and those beasts of burden, they poo, and that's their exhaust, right? Our modern vehicles, you know, exude sometimes noxious fumes. Medieval vehicles, the engines of the medieval vehicles exuded fecal matter. So when your cities are full of carts being drawn by beasts of burden, it's naturally going to happen that, you know, you're going to end up with streets that are, you know, relatively poo covered. But here's the secret, everyone. Everything was a commodity in the medieval world. Everything. There was almost no waste matter in the sense that we understand waste matter, in the sense of that it was useless and that it would be discarded and buried and forgotten. That very rarely happened. And the fecal matter manure was a great resource. One, you can use it to build, it's part of the recipe in wattle and daub. So you see the white in the building behind me? So that is daub. Daub is made, it's a kind of a clayish mixture made of clay and sometimes sand and straw and often animal manure, because the animal manure is basically often, especially cow and horse manure and donkey manure, any ruminant manure it's basically processed grass. And that grass, the fibers in the grass that have been put through the digestive tract are perfect for being a binding agent in the daub of the wattle and daub half timber structures. So they would actually there was actually a profession, worst job in history, of someone who would go and clean the poop off of the streets and collect it and then sell it to the various groups of the various artisans who actually used it as part of their production process, as part of their raw materials. So yes, the poo would fall, but it wouldn't be just left there. However, you did have to wait for someone to come and collect it for it to be gotten rid of. So yes, of course, there's going to be that interim phase between the creation of said raw material and its collection, when you might actually step through said raw material, which is why they developed coverings for their shoes, external shoes, basically overshoes called pattens, that they would put on so that when they're out in the streets, their shoes wouldn't get damaged by whatever muck was out there. So yes, there was certainly more poo in the streets than there is now, but it isn't necessarily as bad as everyone imagines it was. However, the smell would have definitely been more intense in medieval Europe than it is now. Well, than it is now in the West. I have traveled in places in the world where the conditions are pretty much the same. So just remember that if you live in a place that's clean and that smells nice, and that's not the way it is everywhere in the world for everyone. Yeah. Let me see. Who is helping you? I see an arm and hear a voice. Oh, Kate, do you want to?
Hello.
This is my bosom buddy, Catalina. She is working feverishly to finish a Gomorrah. She, in the time-honored tradition of all medievalists, she started this. How long ago did you start this, Kate?
A week ago?
A week ago, yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. She started a Gomorrah. This style of gown that you see here, she started it a week ago, and she is now feverishly working to attach the lacing rings. Yes, so yeah. Time-honored traditions must be well honored, mustn't they? Mustn't they?
I don't make the rules.
We don't make the rules. Now, I did start on my turret months and months and months ago, but life just keeps getting in the way. Yeah, so here I am, also working to finish this. Feverishly is maybe not quite the right term, but determinedly.
We're definitely not warm.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah, not warm. It is. You would be ill-pressed to believe this is Alabama. It is about 17 degrees centigrade for those who think and feel in centigrade. And for those who think and feel in Fahrenheit, it's about 66. So this is, and it's a wet 66 and it's a breezy overcast 66. So it is very unusual. Okay, let me show you my progress thus far. Here, I've got the second piece of reinforcement on here. This is the main one that goes along the front, and then I'm going to do another probably 2 pieces right along here. And yes, it doesn't look necessarily particularly pretty. It doesn't need to. This is going to be covered entirely in a silk covering that I've already finished, and I'm going to have to unstitch part of, and I'll tell you about that when we get there. Yes. The last time I made one of these was 2006. And then I remade that one in 2017. So there's been a really long gap between makings. And so I am relearning and reteaching myself so much as I go along this process. But that's okay, because actually, since I made the first one in 2006, and then the second one in 2017, I have learned so much through my research and exploration. So it's okay. It's good that I had these gaps, because new resources have I almost switched into German. I spent so much time speaking German and Spanish and French in the last couple of 4 weeks that I almost just flew right into German. Anyway, I have since learned so much that I was able to modify this design and make it what I'm pretty certain is much closer to the way they would have been made. And I say would have been made because, unfortunately, we do not really have any extant ladies' miters or ladies' turrets. None of the ladies, the so-called princess hats, as some of you may think of them or know them, have actually survived from the Middle Ages. Not surprising. However, thanks to the nature of vestments, of ecclesiastical vestments, many bishops' miters have survived. And since in fact, we know that they called the ladies' version a mitre, it is a very logical conclusion that the construction techniques used in the medieval bishops' miters would therefore also apply to the ladies' secular version. And because of the excellent condition that in which some of these miters are, I've been able to actually ascertain their construction method and then reproduce it to a certain degree. And those are the techniques I'm using on this one. Now, of course, my dream, and no one should ever let me do this, but my dream anyway would be to get one of there's a exceedingly well-preserved one in the Museum of Applied Arts in Berlin. And in the ideal world, I would, get to actually pick apart one of the seams and get a peek on the inside to see if my assumptions are correct. But also, no one should probably let me do that. Am I really wearing real animal fur? That's funny. She's right. It looks orange. This is in the camera. Look, no, look there.
It does.
It does look orange, right?
It's much oranger.
Yeah, it is much oranger. Yeah, so this is real animal fur. It's a vintage item from 60 years ago or more. It is not orange. I don't know what the I don't know exactly what the camera is doing to interpret the color like that. It is a much more natural shade of brown than it looks there. I think it might be actually the way it's contrasting with the pink and the way the camera's
Yeah.
picking that up, probably. Yeah, this is a real fur. It is real fur. It is not petrochemicals. It is also not a new fur. This fur was put together 60 years ago or more in an era when, such garments were actually made with care. And it was found in an estate sale. And I know some people feel a certain way about fur, and I certainly feel that way about the modern fur industry because the way animals are treated is no. I have no problem with fur in general. I eat meat, so I shouldn't have a problem with fur. I have a problem with the fur industry and how wasteful it is and how cruel it is. That's awful. To shake an animal out of its skin, I mean, that's just grotesque. But these furs come from a very long time ago, and I think it would be a shame to not use them when the animals already died for them to be made. So I'm a big supporter of secondhand items, reusing items that have been around for a long time, such as this fur. And it is cold here. It is cold. We are outside and we are sitting on the ground. So yeah, hence the fur is essential. Oh, tornado, thank you. Let me see. Advaita, you know Heilung? When you say Heilung, do you mean German Heilung, like healing? Is that what you mean? In which case, yes, I am familiar with the German word Heilung. Yeah. So I'm just now poking holes to match up with the holes of the holes that are already in this piece of vellum. This is actually being recycled from an earlier turret that I made, the one I made and then remade in 2017. So, again, you use everything, don't throw anything away is definitely the name of my game. And so I'm using those pieces that are actually sweat stiffened to stiffen the outer edge of my turret. And I'm really working hard to not put the safety pin through my finger. Really, ideally, you should use an awl for this. You should absolutely use an awl. I'll try to put this down more onto my hand so you can see what I'm doing. You should absolutely use an awl for this, but I don't have an awl, and I do have safety pins, so safety pin it is. But an awl would certainly be the much more appropriate tool. And also, I should be doing this onto a cutting board. I have none of those things at the moment, and I'm not going to. I could probably get a cutting board now that I think about it, but I'm not going to do that. It's okay. I don't need it. I can just accidentally put the needle through my finger and get another infection like I got last week. Yeah, that was quite a saga. Oh, goodness. Yeah, so these miters, a lot of people think that these turrets were just worn by medieval princesses, but they were not. They were a fashion item, and they were worn by upper members of society. They certainly were not worn by peasants in the field. In fact, there's a fantastic song, a fun, sassy song from 15th century France that actually talks about sort of a class war between a bourgeoise, a middle class member of the merchant class, and a noblewoman. And one of the things that the merchantess says about the noblewoman is that she wears these ridiculously tall hats that will be whipped off by the lightest breeze. Which is funny because we have a lot of portraits of very wealthy merchantesses, of bourgeois women from the Low Countries, from Flanders, and they are indeed wearing turrets of a nature. Now, you could argue that the extremely tall, elongated version is perhaps the one that was worn only, in quotes, by princesses of the royal house or queens or, regnate members of regnate ladies, so to say. But I haven't actually found any documentary evidence that says that turrets of a certain height were reserved for a certain social class, socioeconomic class of lady. And all of the only depictions of the super tall turrets are honestly of women in these medieval fantasy stories that I was talking about earlier, which begs the question of whether they were, in fact, those are real women, those are showing their real fashions or not. And I tend to lean these days towards those illuminations not really showing real fashions necessarily, that one should assume initially that it's fantasy, and then if one has corroborating evidence in the form of actual actual portraits of real women, then one can decide that it is in fact a real lady with a real hat. So I have put down my needle somewhere. That's not good because I don't have, oh, there it is, thank God. I don't have many left. After 4 weeks of travel and having to show my medieval needle cases to every single border security agent at an airport, I have almost no needles left because every time I have to open them up, the needles fall out. I don't necessarily get all the needles back into the case properly, and then I end up losing them. So, and that's because, I'll show you for those who haven't seen, my medieval needle cases. Yeah. On an x-ray, this looks like a bullet. It does. And even if I take it apart, it still looks like pieces of a bullet. So they always want to look at it, and they always swipe it to make sure it's not somehow a secret kind of bullet, even though it's got needles in it, right? They want to make sure there's no residue on it that could indicate that it's an explosive of some kind. Okay, whatever security theater it takes. Yeah. If you're watching, don't forget to like and subscribe. Sorry, this is the ecosystem in which I operate. So I'm just now taking this piece and I'm going to trim it down because these were pieces that I just cut off of my last turret. And the problem is that it's kind of angling up a little too far there, and I think that's going to become problematic. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off the edge here just to make it, yeah. And you can absolutely, no, I'm using scissors only on this part. If I were cutting this part, and I actually did a video showing this process, a short video, when I cut this, I used a razor blade. I did not use scissors, because if you use scissors, you're gonna get all kinds of raw, weird, rough edges from cutting, because vellum does not cut the way fabric does. But for just chopping this up, yeah, I'm just gonna use scissors. Yep. Oh, sorry, there was some new comments and I completely missed them. Oh, my poor handsome condottiero is jet lagging. That is the way of travel, is it not? Yeah, we just finished a whirlwind tour of the Mediterranean. We got to see lots of amazing artifacts, and I've made some, if you want to check those out, I've done some community posts on that, so you can see the fun objects that we were privileged to discover and explore. Yeah, we learned quite a bit of, quite some new things. We actually got to go into Topkapi Palace, into the harem, the 15th century harem, which has been recently renovated. Well, not renovated, restored, and opened back up to the public. Not the entire thing, but a large part of it. And that was very interesting because so many people have the absolutely wrong idea about what a harem was, what you might call a harem. What they were, function, who lived there, how time was spent in there. So I'll just go ahead and cut to the chase. In the court, in any court, but especially in the Ottoman court, the harem was literally just the private residence of the imperial family and all of their servants, their household basically. And that was a lot of people because it was all of their eunuchs, it was all of their maidservants, it was the concubines, it was the wives, it was the sisters and brothers. Very nice, looks fantastic, my dear.
I'm gonna go get the sleeve lacing rings.
Ah, yes, and then onto the sleeves.
Onto the sleeves.
Onto the sleeves, onward. And so, you know, the harem was where the imperial family lived their private life. It was not a place of hedonistic sexual delight like everyone thinks it was. That happened in the privacy of the Sultan's chambers. That did not happen just kind of out and about. And what was one of the most fascinating things about the harem that we found was the smoking room. And you're probably wondering why that would be fascinating. Well, for one, I think it's the oldest smoking room in Europe, and it might be the oldest smoking room in Eurasia, Africa. Two, it was this incredibly organized and sophisticated space. So the Ottomans started smoking tobacco very early, end of the 16th, early 17th century. And there was an entire department in the Sultan's household that was dedicated to managing the smoking because all the men folk smoked. All of them smoked, apparently. And the smoking room is this massive room with padded benches along the wall, and there's a brazier in the center. And in the brazier, they would set the ends of their pipes, and their pipes were 3 meters long, or not 3 meters, were a meter long or longer, more than a meter and a half long. Crazy long pipes, because they acknowledged that the smell of burning tobacco was unpleasant. And so they didn't want the tobacco smoke to be actually near them. They just wanted the effects of the tobacco smoke as much as possible. So the tip of the pipe would actually rest near the brazier, and they would actually then, smoke sitting back comfortably on these padded benches. And there was a eunuch whose entire job it was to manage, and it was a high-ranking position, to manage the smoking room, which meant managing the supply of tobacco, quality control, keeping the pipes clean, making sure that the coals in the brazier to light the pipes kept going all day. So I'd never even occurred to me that A, the Ottomans were smoking pipes in the 17th century, B, there was a smoking room, C, there was a smoking department to manage the smoking room. It was a very fascinating visit through the harem. I'd almost say it was worth, for the harem alone, it was probably worth $57, which was the cost of entry, which is obscene. Now, would I pay $57 again? That's not likely. That's probably not going to happen. But it was worth it for the one time. I will say that. But also $57 is a lot to visit a palace that is no longer lived in, and that doesn't really have very much in the way left of its original furnishings. Yeah. So yeah, welcome to my medieval sewing party. If you're just tuning in, I am working on making a medieval headdress called what some of you might know of as a hennin, but it was called a turret or a mitre in the 15th century. And I am now in the process of attaching the reinforcing band to the part of the headdress that's going to be right against my forehead, where I will no doubt emit sweat, because that's what you do when you dance 15th century dances, which I do, and I teach them also. In fact, if you're interested in learning about medieval dance on this very channel that you may be watching, I have a number of dance tutorials and videos. Wow, this does not want to go through. So if you're interested in learning more about medieval dance, I've got plenty of videos on this channel. So yeah, is anyone else actually working on projects? I know it's the middle of the week, in the middle of the workday in the United States, which means probably many of you are working on, well, work. I am currently in what I call the pre-immersive, the pre-stages of a 15th century immersive event, and we are just sitting here, my bosom companion and I, working on projects, trying to get things done so we can actually wear them at said event.
What do we think for the sleeves? Filigrees or comets?
Ooh, I'd go with the filigrees because they'll actually be seen, and the filigrees I think will be more light catching. Let me just give them a peep. So these are replica lacing rings, and let me see if I can get the camera to focus. There we go. Yeah. So this is the part that actually gets sewn to the garment, and then this is the part through which the lace actually goes. And we have two options. We've got this little scallop, maybe a scallop end. And then we also have this lovely this option, like little comment tail, right? So I think we're gonna go, I would suggest the comment tail, honestly, because it's so,
I was leaning towards the comments.
it's so super fancy. And those are replicas of original lacing rings. Billy and Charlie of Billy and Charlie's Finest Pewter Wares sell them. Oh, I didn't put on any bling today.
I think 2 dozen will be enough for both sleeves.
Oh God, more than. I mean,
Biceps
you don't need that many. You don't need that many lacing rings for your sleeves. Oh goodness, that will be so way more than. That's overkill.
Okay.
That's lace overkill. I mean, here.
Into reality mean nothing to me.
Right. I forgot.
From the
yes.
bodice.
Right.
Counting.
Right. Got it. Okay. Yes, plenty. More than enough.
Okay. I need to restitch these.
And so I'm hoping to get this done in time. This is a style of headdress that, was in fashion very briefly and is one of the few headdress fashions that doesn't seem to have made a comeback, the turret. So it's going to be, for those who are wondering, I'll go ahead and show you. It's shaped like a cone, goes on the head like this, and then it will be covered in a black silk. And then, yeah, unfortunately, so there's a delay in me getting the comments, just so everyone knows. There's a delay in me getting comments. The last comment I have, wait, just a whole bunch just came through. Okay, sorry. Welcome to my world. Yeah. Sorry for literally the last 10 minutes, there have been no comments, and now suddenly there are a whole lot of comments. Okay, let me pause and take a read through the comments. Okay. Oh goodness. Okay. Okay. Going back. Let me see. She's literally using animal hide. Do you think talking about eating animals will be an issue? No. I eat animals all the time. We love animals. We love them living, and we also love them to eat them, don't we? Yes. We love animals in all their forms. So, yeah. Yeah, so Saga Datura, it was not shisha. It was just a regular pipe. So not a water pipe or anything like that. Just a long metal pipe for the Ottoman smoking room. Is that a mural or a quilt in the background? This is neither. This is a tapestry, actually, and it's a replica of a tapestry from the 1460s, I believe. This one, it's 1460s or 1470s. Yeah. So this is an actual replica tapestry, and this one is the fabric is tapestry woven, wool and yeah, it's a tapestry weave, wool and silk, but then the pattern has been hand painted on top of it, has been silk screened on top of it.
I need to get my other favorite needle.
Edward Elliott, welcome back. Nice to see you. Okay, so the stitch I am using in this is basically a long running stitch. Let me see if I can show you. It's just up and down, moving across. Yeah, let's see, maybe you can see it there. Yeah, so this is a running stitch. It's literally like this, just moving in one direction, and then I go back and counter it. So for instance, on this one, these were terribly uneven. Don't judge, it doesn't matter, this isn't going to show, right? And now I'm going to go back through and go the other way. So let me show you that. So I come up, and then I go back down. Yeah, sorry about the comments, everyone. They literally come batch-wise. I see no comments for a long time, and then suddenly there's literally 20 new comments. All right, so we go down, and then on the back side, I go through. It's the same technique you use for leather. For those who've done leather seams, same idea. I could hypothetically actually do this with 2 needles and then get the same effect if I really wanted to, if I had 2 needles left, but most of them are gone now after my 4 weeks of travel. So yeah, that's what I'm doing basically. It's a long running stitch because this isn't actually, there won't be any stress put on this particular part. This is just to attach the band on. And I actually think the one bishop's mitre frame that I saw where all the fabric was gone and it was just the vellum, I'm pretty certain that was glued on actually. Now, the glue would have been hide glue or possibly rabbit glue or fish glue. And I've got none of those, so I didn't want to use just a modern glue, so instead we're sewing it on. Also, I'm kind of concerned about the amount that I dance, and all those kinds of glues are water soluble, so I'm concerned that my sweat could actually cause the glue to dissolve, and then this band would come off entirely. So that's another reason I'm sewing it on, because I acknowledge that unlike bishops who didn't do very much in their bishop's miters, ladies wearing a turret danced and sweat and did lots of things. And I definitely dance and sweat and do lots of things in my turrets. So sometimes we have to make practical considerations in determining techniques. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's the creative Contessa.
Oh my
I've
gosh.
seen you on the internet before.
Have you?
It's me, Engel. You might have. How are you? I'm checking in early. Tell me if you
Welcome.
need anything.
Welcome.
I'm in the Bella this year.
Sweet. Yeah, so apparently everyone's coming. Apparently everyone's coming early to the event because Albrecht and Agnes are also on their way here, so they'll be here at 4. So.
Oh really?
Yeah,
It's a party.
it's a party.
I got so much alcohol for everybody.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. We're totally live streaming that.
Oh, okay. I'm kind of an internet. Oh, man.
Yeah. This is everyone. This is what.
Oh, they're not working.
They're not working right now. So for those of you who know Engel the Landsknecht, he's not looking very Landsknechty at the moment.
I feel this is kind of.
He's incognito.
Yeah.
Go get dressed, man.
Okay. Sorry.
Welcome. I didn't know you were coming. That's awesome. Today? I didn't know you were coming today. Yeah, you're early relative to my knowledge, but hey, welcome. So apparently we're going to be having one big old party tonight. Yeah. We thought it was just you and I. It is not.
We thought we were getting a girls' getaway.
We thought we were getting a girls' getaway. Instead, we're getting an actual intimate Decameron moment. We're going to have a really proper Decameron party tonight. Sweet. Fantastic. I mean, I like our intimate moment, but I'm also okay with this.
Yes.
And because we have Albrecht, we can actually dance
I know,
to music.
yeah.
We can dance to music.
I have my private
Yay.
dance tutorial with a live musician.
Let me see. Ba Khan, I am American originally, but I've lived overseas for the last 23 years. So yeah, I'm not certain. I kind of view myself as a citizen of the world, and I like it that way. And I have explored many different cultures and histories, and I've developed a deep appreciation for the differences that are out there. Yeah. Let me see, other questions. Let me see. She's great in a pinch if you need stitches. Give kitties extra cuddles for me. Yeah, I think you're talking to Ryan. Unfortunately, we have no kitties here. We have a hen. We have a hen somewhere who thinks of herself as, I think, a resident.
Yes, she does. She hangs out
Yeah.
inside the belt. She's the one that figured out if she stays indoors,
she won't die. Yeah, she's the clever one. All the other chickens that were here on this property, they are no more. they are ex-chickens. For those who remember the parrot sketch from Monty Python's Flying Circus, these are ex-chickens. No trace was left of them, I'll put it that way. They just vanished one day. This chicken apparently vanished too for 2 weeks, but she probably went to ground and then realized it was safe to come back. Okay, so for those who wonder, I am actually waxing my thread so that I can continue with the process of attaching this band around the part of the turret that will be going right over my head like that. And it's not going, this isn't it, it's going to be covered in silk and whatnot. No, I just disturbed my Rita. It's going to be covered in silk. For now, a simple black silk on the outside. Eventually, though, the plan is to make a beautiful pearled and goldwork embroidered cover to go over top of it.
Embroidery that you have on the current Not-A-Hennin.
Yeah, no, it is an ex Not-A-Hennin. It is
it
no
has
more.
been deconstructed.
It's been deconstructed. Well, the last set of luggage grill is basically meant that I could do nothing else to save it. So you are looking at what's left.
Oh, no.
I still have that. I'm going to turn that into a pouch. So for those who have seen my older turret, my other turret, it was embroidered in white silk on black wool, and I'm going to turn that into a pouch. That the cover that's going to become a pouch, because that is a waste not, want not. It's a very medieval practice. We know that beautiful embroidered fabrics that were once headdresses or garments or whatever often get, in the Middle Ages, are often upcycled or recycled into things like pouches, because usually part of it wears away, and so all that's left is enough to do a pouch. And there is exactly enough in the cover from my most recent Not-A-Hennin to make a cute little pouch out of it. So that's its future. It's going to become a pouch. So stay tuned for what do we call that? Luxury 15th century designer handbags with the Contessa. Okay, so I've just got one little piece left to reinforce, and then we'll be good. Now I just need to find my oh so safe and professional hole puncher, i.e. that scary, scary safety pin. I don't know where it went. Oh, there it is. Great. Okay. Oh, look, more comments. Okay, so the comments, for those who don't understand what my life is like, I look at the screen, there are no comments, there are no comments, there are no comments. I touch the screen and 50 comments appear. So I'm not ignoring your questions. I really am not. It's just that for me to actually sew and talk about learning and monitor the live chat at the same time, that isn't actually monitor, it's showing itself the way it should, little frustrating. So if you had a good question and not a mean or intentionally hurtful question, pop it back in the chat and I will try to get to it, I promise. Oh, good afternoon, Mark. Welcome. Oh, thank God Susan jumped in, or Ryan jumped. Oh, Ryan is monitoring. That's good. Okay. This is Costume Cornelia. This is an immersive living history event. It's not any organization. It's kind of my own creation with some bosom companions. So it doesn't represent any organization. It is an immersive event that we called the Decameron. And it basically is in imitation of the framework part of Il Decamerone, the idea that a group of aristocrats flee the plague-ridden city to a beautiful country estate, and they disport for 10 days, they dance and they feast and they tell stories and they engage in all manner of fun medieval delights. And that is what we do. And we try to eschew talk of modern things. We try to phrase things in a more courtly manner, and we game and we dance and we have deeds of arms in full harness for those who do harness fighting. And it's an intimate event, maximum of 30 people, and we have food. We have 15th century food like you can't imagine. Our cooks, our kitchen staff makes culinary art from the 15th century. And people who have been to other medievalist events then come to ours, they are shocked at what they have missed out on, are they not? Yeah.
Yes, it's delightful.
Yeah. So that is what this event is.
Includes all of our.
Yeah. And yeah, the cost of the event includes all of the food. It's literally breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and a massive feast, and a ladies' picnic. And we have a professional live musician, Master Albrecht, my household minstrel, comes. I teach and lead dance. So we have a really magical time. It's it's probably my favorite event in the year, honestly. Also because it's small, maximum of 30 people. In a very large site, and I'll try to do a live stream tour. Unfortunately, it's like being in the 1480s here in terms of in fact, I probably would have had better cell phone connectivity in the 1480s in Florence than I have here in the 21st century in this part of Alabama. It's pretty frustrating. So it's unfortunately that kind of precludes a live stream tour, but I might do a recorded tour and then just post it. I'll probably do that. I'll probably do a proper horizontal, show you the whole site, introduce you to some of the wonderful people that are here, and then you can get an idea of the kind of magic we can create here. Yeah. Comment is fat bishops in heavy clothes probably sweated a lot. They might have repaired a lot with glue. Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that. Although, okay, so to be honest, if you look, we actually a lot of bishops from especially the earlier Middle Ages, so pre-1500 or pre-1400, a lot of bishops were warrior bishops.
Yeah,
I
think the idea of a fat bishop is a pretty modern idea.
Well, I mean, so by the 15th century,
Fasting is also a pretty big part of the
15th century, you're starting to get some round bishops. We know because we see their effigies, right?
Yeah.
Like they're medieval death effigies do not idealize anyone, in case you're wondering, especially not when it comes to members of the clergy. So you're starting to get some roundish bishops by the 15th century, but even then, not as many as you might think. Really round bishops, that's kind of a 16th century and later development. But even still, if it's hot and they're out doing some kind of procession, which processions were a big part of medieval life. And that's when a bishop would wear a mitre, especially the really fancy ones that have survived. So yeah, Billy, you're not wrong. They were probably sweating too. They probably also had to repair the clue. But I definitely sweat. Like, there's no question that I sweat. Oh goodness, missed all sorts of them. Yeah, I glisten. I glisten a lot. I profusely glisten. Oh goodness. Okay. So many good guys. Keep up the chat. Do keep up the chat. I love this stuff. Pretty cool. Yeah. So if you all are chatting, and that's awesome. If I missed any questions and I didn't answer them, do pop them again in the chat, and I promise I'll try to keep an eye on this ornery live chat that's not playing ball like it should. Right. Okay. So now I need to poke some more holes because I've now poked the holes on both sides of this piece with my very professional safety pin. And now I'm going to take my safety pin and I'm going to poke the holes at roughly the same distance on the frame, the bottom itself. Now, the holes do not have to match up exactly. There can be some discrepancy. Both of these, the vellum is stiff enough that it's not going to scrunch up the way fabric would if the holes didn't align exactly. But you do still want them to be more or less in, at the same distance in the same place you want it to be. So, and hopefully I won't put this through my finger because this safety pin, the way I'm pushing on it, that would go through my finger. So you all, this might become a viral live stream on replay. The highlight will be me spurting blood.
Don't get blood on my fur.
I'll try not to. Fur is very blood resistant, though. Fur is good at resisting stains. For those who don't know.
Don't get blood on my taffeta.
I'll try. I won't. You should definitely be more concerned about the taffeta. That's what
true friends care about.
Exactly. Friends don't let friends bleed on their silk taffeta. Yeah. So here we go. This is going pretty well. I probably shouldn't have said that aloud. How's it going there, my dearest Catalina?
I've just restitched the forearm pieces, so now I can start pinning the location of the sleeve.
Oh, did you check whether it will fit this time?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so
I significantly reduced
the amount that's closed, yeah. So she's doing a sleeve that's pretty much exactly like this one.
That is good.
Yeah. Same shape, right? Okay. So the problem she had is that she sewed this part too far up, and it was so tight that you probably couldn't have bent your arm very well, right? Yeah. So she just opened up the seam a little bit, and so now there's just a bigger gap, and that's fine because the gap, you get the pretty white poof through the gap. Yeah, sewing can absolutely be really dangerous.
Too much of the center out the elbow.
Oof.
But it'll be fine.
Yeah, I once jabbed myself with a needle about like this, actually, all the way to the bone, and I thought I cleaned it out. 2 days later, I'm at the office where I used to work for Merck KGA in Darmstadt as a full-time translator, and my finger is really red and really tight and really swollen and is not looking so hot around the wound site. And thankfully, there is an on-site doctor because it's a factory. It has factory production, so they have an on-site clinic with really excellent emergency care. And I go to the doctor, and she looks at it, and she says, yeah, we're going to soak that in iodine for 20 minutes. And yeah, we're going to do some things. It was pussy. I won't go.
I'm going to do the same thing to the biceps.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
I'm barely going to stitch the bicep together. We'll just have a very lacy bicep.
Well, I mean, you don't have to, you could just put lacing rings. You don't need to have it closed at all in the bicep.
True.
You can, if you want, you can have lacing rings all the way up.
I might just tack it just to make lacing it a little easier.
Okay, and again, I'm using linen thread, and I have waxed this thread already because it's the length of thread I had already started from before. So, yeah. Okay, so the thing is that I don't care. Yeah, I just poked my finger really good. Well, we'll see. Well, we shall see if that gets infected. I actually I have some really good prescription grade antibiotic cream that I will happily use on it because I cut myself in Athens on a nail under a chair a couple of weeks ago, and it was actually healing fine. And then a week and a half later, I woke up one morning and the entire joint was infected and covered in red red sores, and I couldn't bend the finger. And I thought it was that wound had gotten infected, and the wound was bright red and very angry and was peeling, which was weird. But it turns out that actually, after all was said and done, I had a shard of glass in another spot of the same finger. My body hates me. I'm mean to it all the time. So I had a shard of glass in the finger, and that got infected and caused the infection to just kind of spread all the way around the skin there. So we removed the shard of glass, and I was on antibiotics anyway for the infection, and it's all better now, basically. That's what this mess is. Yeah, sorry about that, but try to trim at least the shredding. I prefer cloth Band-Aids much over plastic for many, many reasons. Unfortunately, they do slowly unweave, so I just poked my finger again, so whatever. I want to keep sewing. I don't want to take the time to go and cleanse the wound. I don't want to be a responsible adult.
We don't have time for that.
I don't have time for this. Oh, Andrew, thank you, sir. I definitely appreciate the reproduction medical equipment. That is excellent. Actually, I'm always impressed with how sharp ancient Roman scalpels were, and the few surviving pieces of 15th century scalpels I've seen were actually also remarkably sharp, No, Andrew, I do not do things by half. I commit to my projects. And I think we all know, don't we, Kate, that if you do not shed blood on a project,
it doesn't even count.
It doesn't count, and it won't work, right? It will be a failure.
It needs a blood sacrifice.
It needs a blood sacrifice. If you do not make a blood sacrifice, that actually kind of hurts. Then there will be issues, right? Right, handsome, I thought about bringing some big tapestries. I'll be honest, I didn't feel like doing that kind of setup this time. I could have grabbed all the tapestries. I just didn't feel like doing that much setup for the haul this year.
Well, and we weren't sure how I would get them.
Yeah, there was that too.
Get them home.
there's also questions about, how much room Kate is going to have on the back ride, that kind of thing. So there were some practical considerations. Yeah, wow, that really hurts. I think that needle went in pretty far. Oh, well. Okay. Is it bleeding yet? No, and that's kind of why I'm worried. Come on, little wound, bleed. Oh, there we go. Okay. Come on. I know all of you wanted to watch me making my thumb bleed. Right. So I've had some very interesting questions in the comments of other videos lately, and I was trying to recall what they were. Instead, I'll talk about the interesting podcast I listened to on medievalist.net today. And for those who don't know medievalist.net, check out their website. They have amazing articles, and their podcasts are really excellent. And there was a podcast called The 200 Years' War, referring to the 100 Years' War, as we now call it, and making a pretty valid claim that it really is much closer to a 200 Years' War than a 100 Years' War. And the historian who was being interviewed in the podcast has just recently published a new book on the 200 Years' War, the 100 Years' War. And he was talking, one of the interesting things he said was that to stay within the word count limit that the publisher required for publication, for printing, he actually had to cut 100,000 words. Can you imagine? You've written 100,000 words of well-researched history text, and you have to cut it from the final publication. I'm confident, I hope anyway, that he still has that draft and that maybe he could make it available as extra material for some kind of maybe an e-publication or something. I don't know. But what the things he made some really interesting points about how gunpowder, the introduction of gunpowder in artillery to the battlefield and its advancement in battlefield uses from its evolution from the end of the 13th century to the end of the 15th century. And how that not only changed, the prosecution of wars themselves, but it changed who could prosecute them. That it's something I didn't think about, but of course, being an expert, the artillery experts were almost never members of the aristocracy, right? The aristocracy were the cavalry. They were the mounted warriors. And yet artillery gaining prominence and importance in the field means that it's a different kind of people who are going to start leading your armies and their units. And it also, he made an argument that it opened up a way for a more meritocratic armed forces, and also changed the way that units would be organized and structured. And of course is why he made the argument that that's the way modern armies are formed is the result of the introduction of gunpowder. And I never really, if I had stopped to think about that, I may have come to those same conclusions. I also may not have. But it was interesting here in pointing that out, and it makes a lot of sense. Artillery in the end of the 13th century is used to scare horses and to hopefully foul up a cavalry charge by terrifying the horses and, maybe startling the riders. But by the end of the 15th century, it's a much more effective method of actually, creating damage to the opposing force. No longer just a question of psychological warfare.
Do you think I should do spiral on the arm or just straight horizontal?
I know spiral. You're going to be very frustrated with ladder lacing. Don't do ladder lacing. It's going to bunch up weirdly. Always spiral. I've got some theories. For those who are wondering, I was just asked about Kate was asking whether to do spiral lacing, which is what this is, spiral, or ladder lacing. Ladder lacing is almost impossible to actually. Ladder lacing means creating perfectly parallel rows of lacing. There's a lot of theories about how to actually create the perfect ladders that you see on some of these sleeves and some of the gowns. And all of the theories I've seen put to practice, none of them create the actual look that you see in those portraits. So I think we haven't actually figured it out yet. And so my advice is, since spiral lacing is absolutely a 15th century lacing technique, for now, let's do that. Let's just do that.
Should I put a lacing ring all the way to the top here, or just kind of probably down?
No, if I would start further down. Yeah, and in fact, so it especially if you want, depends on how much, if you want poof, right?
Oh, yes, we want poof.
Then you want bigger gaps.
Oh yeah, I think I'll.
Yeah.
Do bigger.
Yeah.
There might only be.
Villa says, war is a very loose term, especially back then. Like the Cousins' War was more the cousins' multiple battles between winter and farming needs. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And obviously it's talking about the 200 Years' War, the 100 Years' War. That's our term for it. They didn't call it that. They, and they didn't even view it, no doubt. I mean, I have no evidence. I've not seen evidence that someone in the 15th century, for instance, looked back on the last 100+ years of conflict as a single war. Right, that's us. That's more modern people, modern historians looking to box things up neatly for the sake of categorization and understanding. As always, it's more complicated than that. 100%, I agree. The question was, is this at the Old Bedford Village? It is not. This is a site called Dalwhinnie outside of Selma, Alabama, of all unexpected places. Yeah, looks good. Just, you want to make sure the two ends must be perfectly parallel. So you might want to migrate one of those, or just fudge it a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, Andrew, definitely this author definitely had enough. I think it could have been 2 volumes, but unfortunately the publishing deal he had was not for 2 volumes. So, maybe he'll be able to do something with that additional material, I hope. Now, for those who have never waxed thread before, so this is linen thread, and I'm about to wax it with beeswax. It's cold here, by the way. It is not warm. So you should always warm your wax up, especially if it's a little cold. And this wax is not new. It's pretty old, actually. And so it's gotten a little stiff over time. And so it needs a little extra TLC, a little extra cuddling to make it actually be soft enough and malleable enough to wax the thread. And the reason, I'll repeat this for those who might be wondering, have joined in, the reason we wax our thread is so that it smooths it out, it makes it stronger, it prevents it from knotting on itself, it prevents it from tearing as you sew.
How many people are getting here today?
I don't know, man. In point of fact, never do this with machine thread, though. This might be one of the, that's Lex. He lives here.
Great.
He's allowed to be here.
Whoa.
In point of fact, never ever wax your thread for a machine. If you're machine sewing, you will gum up the works of your machine literally if you wax your thread. You don't need to wax your thread if you machine sew. You only need to wax your thread if you hand sew. So keep that in mind. Let's see, how am I going to do this? I think I'm going to do this way. Okay. So the kind of stitch I'm doing is basically a long running stitch, for those who know what a running stitch is. And I'm countering it. So I'm doing the long running stitch in one direction, leaving gaps, which you can see sort of here still. And then I'm going back with the thread and filling gaps on the other side. So there's 2 lines of stitching. And I could absolutely do this with 2 needles at the same time. In fact, that's what leather workers do when this is basically a leather working technique. And I'm working with vellum, which is animal skin, so it makes sense to use this technique here. I just no longer have 2 of the same kind of needle to be able to do that because I've lost all my needles over my travels.
Short of the comets.
2 rings short on the comets, really?
It's 14. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14.
Okay. And I'm now putting more, and Susan, you're right, I should go put cream on it, but I can do that later when it gets infected.
I'll just put 2 of the pointies at the top of the bicep.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's intentional. It's tying it into the rest of the garment.
Exactly.
It's entirely deliberate.
It's deliberate, it's planned. We meant to do it this way.
I did not run out of.
Am I an elementary school teacher? I am not. I am a teacher of handcrafts and culinary arts, medieval to modern. And I also am hired especially for my expertise in 15th and 16th century dance. People pay me to come to their events and teach workshops and lead evening dancing and organize and host balls and that sort of thing. So I do a lot of teaching, and I teach how to make various kinds of historical garments. I do Zoom workshops and in-person workshops, and I teach patterning and body blocking, but I'm not an elementary school teacher. And I will never be an elementary school teacher because, yeah, for many reasons. But I love teaching. I do enjoy it very much. And if we're really lucky on this last hole, I will once again not. I thought I poked holes on both sides, but apparently I didn't. Somehow missed a section, so here we go. Do I go to schools a lot? I do not go to schools actually very much at all these days, mostly because I spend a lot of time abroad or traveling, and that makes it hard to go to schools. I do most of my teaching. I do get paid to go to some events, living history events or LARP events sometimes, but most of my teaching I either do via live stream like this or via Zoom in workshops. So I actually don't get to schools very often. Okay, there we go. Right. Okay, and once again, my needle has wandered off. What is it with needles and their ability to meander? Oh, by the way, this is what using this safety pin has done to it as an awl. It's not quite as resistant. Oh, where was my needle? It was still in the frame, in the vellum. Oh well. That's the sewist equivalent of where are my glasses and they're on your face. Where is my needle and it's still in the garment?
It's still in.
Yeah, still in the garment. That is definitely the sewist equivalent of where are my glasses. Did I make my dress? I did. I did make this dress. I made the pattern for this dress. I did the research to create this dress from primary source material and also based on some extant garments from the 1460s. And I have an entire vlog, 2 hours and a bit vlog about making this dress from the start to finish and including a final getting dressed video showing how to actually put it on. That is on this channel as well. So yeah, I did make this dress. I made everything you see me wearing at this moment, actually. Not the microphone. I didn't make the lapel mic. That is something I didn't make. In case any of you were wondering what that black fuzzy thing is, that's my microphone. That's not a fashion accessory. Yeah. Oh, the rings. The jewelry, I did not make the jewelry. I forgot I was wearing jewelry. Yeah. So these rings were made by, these are replica 15th century stirrup rings. And so medieval stirrup ring, called that because it looks like a stirrup, right? Like a riding stirrup would have, like riding stirrups looked at the time anyway. And they were made by different artisans, different medieval jewelers who work specifically make replica medieval items. Neither of these are Armor and Castings, but Armor and Castings does make rings like this. They make some very nice stirrup rings, actually. Oh, angry contrarian, it doesn't distress me at all. I am originally from Delaware, actually. I'm proud to say I'm a Delawarean. You may never meet a Delawarean, by the way. There aren't many of us in the world. But I spend most of my time living abroad. And so, yeah, I'm originally American. But I've lived lots of places in the world, and I travel a lot. I spend most of my time traveling, honestly. And yeah, so I do not get offended by people asking me where I'm from. I don't know why anyone should, honestly. Yeah, angry contrarian, don't worry, you're not being disrespectful. I totally appreciate your questions. They are good ones, and do not worry about offending me with good questions like that. In fact, I don't really get offended. I get angry sometimes at certain kinds of questions, but not questions like that. It has to be specifically mean questions, which we do get sometimes in this live stream, unfortunately. Speaking of which, if you're enjoying this live stream, don't forget to like and subscribe. And while we're talking about that, I would like to thank my channel members and my patrons for supporting my creative medievalist work and for being able to share it with everyone to, spread the love of medieval creativity so that, people can experience and learn about something they may not otherwise ever get to see in their lives. Yeah, we have certainly spent a lot of time traveling, and I have lived and studied in different places across the world. So I tend to view myself more as a citizen of the world because it's such a great world, so many wonderful things to see and to experience. Okay, here we go. So yeah, we am currently in Alabama at a venue that has been basically built to be used for medievalist events or LARP events, and it's a been under development for I think 15 years at this point. It's been under development for quite a while, and it is one of the few sites in the U.S. like this. There are a couple of sites where people have built sort of medievaloid venues. One of them is in the Seattle area, Camlin, I think it's called. Up in Quebec, there's an amazing site called Bicolin or Bicoline, maybe Bicoline. There's an E on the end, I think. That's an amazing, that really looks like a 15th century half timber village. That's a pretty amazing site. Because, outside of Europe, there aren't many decent venues for medieval European events, is the unfortunate reality. Wow, this vellum that I recycled for making this, making the reinforcement around the band is really tough. Goodness gracious. So for those who don't know, I made my first Not-A-Hennin in 2006. I call it Not-A-Hennin because modern people refer to the conical princess hat as a hennin, but it was called a turret in the 15th century. And I made my first one in 2006 out of vellum. And there were a lot of lessons learned there, And I remade it basically the exact same way in 2017. And now I'm just making a completely new one. And the reason that I'm doing this, I'm putting these reinforcing bands along the bottom, is because there is actually an extant 15th century bishop's mitre where the fabric is gone, but the frame, the vellum frame, is still extant. And it actually has this band around the bottom, right around where it would have sat against the bishop's head. And that actually, it provides a decent amount of reinforcement. But it also, my theory is it also adds an extra layer for sweat absorption, sweat and oil absorption. Because what I noticed on my other turret is that over the years of wearing it, especially while dancing, the edges, the bottom edges started buckling from the moisture, from sweating, from, oils, but mostly probably from sweating. And so my theory is that putting this band, this extra band of vellum, will actually help prevent that buckling from happening, and will also just generally provide stiffening and reinforcement around the opening that is flexible and comfortable. What are you on to now? Oh, rings. More rings, yes.
We have 28 more rings to sew.
Yes, my dearest companion Catalina is working on her own gamora, a beautiful silk one, which, unlike mine, made out of lowly wool. Hers is beautiful blue taffeta. And so she is attaching the lacing rings now onto the sleeves. She has the lacing rings on the bodice. And so she shall, hopefully, it should be able to wear it by Thursday.
Oh, definitely Thursday. And then the only thing I need to do is put the Jorda together.
That's it. Just put it together.
Just the shoulder sleeves.
Oh, okay.
the two panels of the Jorda
Oh, right.
finished.
You need to join them, I see.
Yes.
Yes. So we might actually today get to. Oh, maybe we'll do this in live stream tomorrow. Depends on how far along you get, because you should have your gamora on when we do that.
Yes.
She has the Jornea is the tabard-like overdress that women wore in the second, starting in the 1440s, honestly, in northern Italy, and it's open on the sides, and it's basically a giant flap in front and a trained flap in the back, and it joins at the shoulders. And so we need to join the front half and the back half of her Jornea, but she rightfully wants to put on her new gamora before setting the shoulder seams on the Jornea, because the Jornea should fit nicely over the gamora. So it's always, whenever you're making historical garments or any garment, you should always make certain that you are wearing the underlayers that should go under the overlayer that you're making. So you should start from the skin out. The first layer you should make in any period is the undergarments. In the case of 1480s, that would be the camicia, this here. You need to make this first. Then you make the gamora, the next layer. Then you can make all the different kinds of overlayers that go over top of this. If you do not do that, it is highly likely that the layers will not fit together well at all. If you make your gamora without fitting it over top of a camicia, then it's not going to sit properly. It will probably be too tight in every way. If you make a jornea or a choppa, these different kinds of overdresses that go over top of this, without having this done first, then again, it will probably also not fit properly, especially if it's fitted. Choppa are the ones that are actually closed at the waist, and they actually need to fit properly over the bodice of your gamora. So yeah, my biggest tip on making especially historical garments where layers are real and tangible and substantial that you make you start at the skin and work your way out. I know the camicia is very rarely the sexy garment that everyone wants to make. Everyone wants to make the cool top layer because that's the prettiest layer. But you're going to do yourself a disservice by not making the camicia first, and also by not wearing a camicia, because this is the layer that protects your dress from you. This is the layer and it's linen, so it whisks the heat and the sweat away, right? And you want that. You want that effect. This is the layer that gets laundered, that can be boiled back into being white and bleached by the sun and the grass and by urine back into being white. You can't do that to this layer. If you put it in the sun, it will turn light pink, eventually orange, and then, fade away. And you can't launder it. You can't wash it. It's wool. You can spot treat it, but you can't just, launder the hell out of it the way you can your white linen layer. So white linen layers for the win. Do I like Filipino clothes? I will ashamedly admit, Blue Flamer, that I know nothing about traditional or historic Filipino garments. I have not been to the Philippines myself. And that's not because I haven't wanted to go. It just hasn't. I travel a lot into a lot of different places. It just hasn't come up on my radar yet. So I cannot observe or comment about historical or traditional Filipino clothes in any way, shape, or form. I'm confident there's probably 30 more comments waiting in the queue. Isn't that fun? I love you, technology. You're the best. Okay. Okay, great. Now I will do what I said earlier, and I'm going to counter stitch to fill in all of these blank spots, right? So I'm going to do counter stitching now. And then that is pretty much the reinforcing band done. And then we get to do the exciting step of connecting the two edges. Yeah, we're getting real close. So for those who have been following this journey, you may or may not know that I finished the cover.
You did the sexy part first.
Well, no, I finished the cover, but I finished it the wrong way around. And I'll show you. It's better if I just show you the thing I did wrong so that you can learn and not do the same thing wrong when you make your own. And it's stupid. There's no reason I should have made this mistake. It's a complete rookie mistake, and I'm kicking myself for it. But I've got a semi-solution that makes it less painful to fix it than the alternative. Basically, I sewed the wrong end of the cover because you sew one end and then slip that on and then sew the other end. Well, I sewed the wrong end together. So yeah, I'm going to have to undo one of the lines of stitching. It's not going to be the pretty one that I undo. It's going to be the messy one that I undo. Let's see. So exciting, getting so close to maybe being able to wear at least the plain version of this. So this style of headdress, the turret, they were very often worn with other things on top of them, including silk velvet hoods and also veils. Veils were very, very big accessory for this style of headdress. So you have the cone. You have your cone, and then it's covered in silk and embroidery, and then on top of that comes a veil, and on top of that comes a black silk hood. And if you want to see what it all looks like together and how it goes together, I have a getting dressed video that's now 2 years old, but still I have a getting dressed video on dressing the Burgundian Contessa, getting dressed like a Burgundian princess, and you can see the process from the skin out of getting dressed in all the layers, including how this headdress goes together. So if you want to sneak peek at what the finished product looks like, go ahead and check that video out on this channel. Okay, so the reinforcing band is done. And Now, the next step, and we're going to go ahead and start this, is to actually connect the cone. Now, I have already attached here this extra panel that basically acts like a joint for the two edges. And that is so that this will actually lay flat. So instead of just whip stitching these edges together, I'm actually stitching them to this joint. And that will force it to be not teardrop shaped, but actually in a proper round cone. So that's why that is done that way. And I've already poked the holes on the one side, thank God. And so now I just have to poke the holes down the other side to line up with that. Yeah, getting really close. That's just exciting as hell. And this is the part where it gets a little hinky because now we're going to be closing this up. And so there is actually a better direction to do this from and a not so better direction to do this from because I'm going to be closing it up. And eventually it's just going to get harder and harder to work with. Not impossible, but there's just less space to actually do the work because the cone closes as you sew it together. Okay, questions. Yeah. Ryan actually says start at the small end and counter stitch or it will be annoying at the small end. Yeah. Yep. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to start at the small end and work our way this way going down. So I just have to tie off my needle and rethread, and then we're going to go ahead and start that. So yeah, does anyone have any questions thus far about the process of making this Not-A-Hennin, this turret? I'm just going to take a moment to drink some water because I've been talking for almost 2 hours. Okay. Right, so I'm going to pre-poke the holes also because trying to poke the holes as I sew on this is going to be super annoying and no fun. Maybe get a newer, sharper paper clip. Well, you know, that might lead to fewer injuries on my part. I don't know if I can brook such comfort. Where is the joy in creation if there is no pain? As we said, blood sacrifices must be made. Right, okay, so I'm just going to shift. I think the blood has stopped circulating through my derriere at this point. I'm just going to shift, turn the camera up a little bit, move it this way, okay. All right. Did you clip the metal ring yet? No, do you mean this? No, that can be done. So after we get this together, we'll be attaching a metal wire around the top so that it's reinforced. Here's the metal wire. This is copper wire. Right? Technically it's aluminum, but it looks like it's copper, which is what they would have originally used. And we know that because there's an extant bishop's mitre in the Museum of Applied Arts in Berlin, and a little bit of the fabric is worn away on the pointed part, the pointed top, and you can very clearly see the wire that's been run all along the entire top of the bishop's mitre to preserve its shape. So that's how we know exactly how that was done, and that's why I put the wire on the top to maintain the shape on the top, especially because I fly with these things. I put these in luggage and I travel with them tens of thousands of miles, and they get subjected to the worst kinds of conditions you can imagine. So having that wire reinforcement, very important. Yeah, extremely important. So just make sure this still lines up properly. And, you know, before you sew anything, you know, when you're at the stage like this and you're closing it up, basically, always just do a final check to make certain that everything lines up still, that the edges are still a good match, right? And they're not quite an exact match. So there's about a 3 millimeter discrepancy. You can see there. There's about a 3 millimeter discrepancy on the back side. A 3 millimeter discrepancy there. And so I have to decide which do I want to trim up to match. But I think it's a pretty easy decision because it's going to be much easier to trim up that top than it is to trim up the whole bottom, especially because the bottom now has that reinforcing band. So there it is. So I'm going to line it up so that the bottom edges definitely match, and I'll deal with that top level discrepancy at a later date. By later, I mean like an hour from now, basically. Have I ever, okay, that's a great, Costume Cornelia says, have I ever considered a double hennin? So depends on what you mean by a double hennin. If you're talking about the really elongated butterfly padded roll headdress, that's actually a species of escoffion. But if you're talking about the two pointed ones, they don't seem to have actually existed. They seem to appear only in later works referencing historical garments. So for example, they appear in depictions from artwork depicting women from 50 years ago or 50 years before. So it depends on what you mean by a double hennin. Yeah, the two-coned thing, I don't have any evidence that that was actually, the two-pointed cone thing, I don't have any evidence that that was actually worn by real women. The escoffion, the giant escoffion, you know, with the two lobes and the padded roll on top, the bourrelet on top, I have considered doing that, but that's for an earlier period. So this style is for 1470s, late 1460s, 1470s, early 1480s. So that's the period I do because I really like those fitted dresses. That's the period I currently do. I have considered going back and, you know, doing some like 1440s, 1450s attire, 1430s, just to explore more of the 15th century. But I would, to do that double lobed escoffion, I would need a different style of dress because it's not the right style for the kinds of gowns that I currently have. So I have considered it, in short, but it's more complicated than that. Big Racer, welcome back. It's been a long time. Been a really long time. Yeah, good. Welcome back. Nice to see you. Okay, right. So here we go. I'm now going to actually make an incision to mark where the discrepancy is so that I know and I don't start things, misalign things on the way down. Now, granted, there is, because this is going to be covered in fabric, there is some room for the edges not to exactly be perfect because the fabric will kind of conceal any minor imperfections, but big imperfections will show. So we definitely want it to line up, with this opening to line up as cleanly as possible. Okay, there we go. Good. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to my super professional hole poker. Ryan's not wrong. Maybe I should get a paper clip whose tempering has not been completely undone. These sewing parties are just my favorite because it shows the real struggles instead of just the finished pretty product that seems so easily done. Yeah, Costume Cornelia, I really like sharing. I like sharing the struggle. I really do. And it's not just because I hope that I'm not the only person out there struggling. I know I'm not the only person out there who struggles. And I know that even the most advanced sewists or costumers who have, like me, decades of experience, when you're exploring a new conjectural garment, there's just going to be struggles, right? There's no written instructions for this stuff. There's nothing like that has survived. We don't even, and when it comes to the women's side of things, we don't have any actual extant headdresses like this, exactly like this. So we can't really know. We have to logic our way through it. And because there are no written instructions for this kind of headdress, at least not the way I make them, because I'm making it up as I go. You know, there are things there are mistakes you make, and there are things you figure out. And I think it's really important to share that process with people as much as anything. You think the Rada has slipped? No, it's still there. It's just that my braids have come forward. See, Rada's still there. It is. The escoffion. Yeah, Costume Cornelia. I've absolutely considered the escoffion because I think it's a fascinating garment. I also think that they were probably, the really big shaped ones were probably also in a vellum, on a vellum frame, but it's possible they may have been like a balzo. They may have been made on a reed frame because the balzos from Italy, which are contemporary-ish with the escoffion, are, would create a light frame that could be covered and create a resilient shape like that. So I have considered the escoffion and how it would be made. Yeah, for certain. That is something I have certainly thought about. Have I made one? No, but I have thought about it in answer to your question. Yeah, I'll definitely finish. So Ryan's comment is trim after we finish sewing. Absolutely. But I made a little snip so that I would know where the edges actually need to be on the top, since I'm starting from the top. Yeah. So I'm just now desperately attempting to not poke myself through the other finger. How many finger infections can I give myself? Yeah, unfortunately this one is completely no longer useful in that manner, so I'm going to have to distemper another paper clip.
Sharp thick. This be better?
Maybe we'll see. I had one like this. Maybe yours will work better than mine. It was just driving back into my finger, which was fun.
Not great.
It was not great. It was suboptimal, honestly. Yeah, but this one doesn't seem to drive back into my finger, so that's nice. See, if I had an awl, then basically there would be a wooden handle around this needle, right? But I don't have an awl. That is not a thing we have. We improvise, right? That's one of the arts of handcrafts is improvisation. You know, especially in the modern world, we've developed all these super specialized tools for everything in the kitchen. I mean, think about all the gadgets, right? And the reality is that you don't need all those specialized tools. You can really get by with just the very basics, and not just get by, you can thrive. It's just that most people, yeah, this one's way better than the one I had. There was no danger of this one going back into my bone. Okay, so holes have been poked there. Now I just have to poke the holes on the other side at more or less the same spots. Princess Hinata says, not one accurate representation of the Renaissance at the Ren Fair this year. Yeah, the Renaissance fairs. So the reality is that Renaissance fairs in the U.S. are not very Renaissance or medieval anymore. A lot of the fairs have even just openly rebranded themselves as fairs. And then they have a theme, like they'll have a pirate theme weekend or a mermaid themed weekend or a fairy themed weekend. And then they might have like one Renaissance themed weekend. But that's just the Renaissance fair world in the US is really completely its own beast. Oh, what have you lost, my dear?
Just one
of the lacing rings. So yeah, Renaissance fairs have basically become a much more what's the phrase? Phrase I'm looking for? They've become a much more fantasy-based enterprise and much less historical-based. Although the first Renaissance fair, as far as I understand it, in the U.S. was not based on any kind of history at all either. So I guess that's kind of fair.
Fair.
Oh shit! Pun not intended, everyone.
I guess we can have more. Gone forever, lacing ring.
Yeah, there are some medieval fairs in the country, in the U.S. that are trying to be more, actually provide a more authentic experience. We will find it. It will be found. They are trying to provide a more innocent, but most of them are really money-making ventures, and that's their point. They are for-profit enterprises, so they offer a product that people want, and people right now want fairies, mermaids, and pirates. And by pirates, I mean Pirates of the Caribbean, not actual pirates. No one wants to see people dressed up like Somali pirates, or, I mean Disney fantasy pirates. Yeah, that's what people are really interested in to a large degree these days. So this part is actually rather challenging. Try to put the camera down here because I'm trying to make sure that these holes actually line up more or less, and I'm now having to fight the tension, the tensile force of the vellum, which ironically, actually I'm going to do it this way, this will be much better. Ironically is the reason we're using it because it has this natural resistance, this structure. It also makes it harder to work with at this stage. Oh, I hear angry birds. You know, people talk about the quiet, the peace and quiet of the countryside, but honestly, animals are loud. And insects and amphibians are especially loud. Oh my God, the sonic assault of... Oh. Well, it almost went into my finger, ladies and gentlemen, but it didn't. Yay. The sonic assault of nature. It's just a different kind of noise than in the city, right? I think that's what it comes down to. It's a different kind of noise. You know, the city, you have the roar of engines and technology. Wow, this needle is the best ever for poking holes in vellum. My God, where have you been all my life, needle? This is great. But, you know, in the country, you've got at nighttime when it's in season, you've got the cacophony of the insects and the cicadas and the duty daddies, whatever they're called. I forget. There's a katydids, and you've got frogs. I don't know, man. So it's a different kind of cacophony. This time of year, though, it's relatively quiet, except for the angry birds. Am I at a Renaissance festival? I am at a living history event. It's an immersive living history event. It's a private event. It is not a for-profit venture. And this is pre-event. We're here in advance of the event, and we're just getting some sewing and projecting done in the hopes of having these things done in time to wear them. So it is not a Renaissance fair. It is a 15th century event, the frame of which is a group of 15th century aristocrats have retreated to the countryside to escape the plague, and we are disporting, we're dancing, we're feasting, we're engaging in deeds of arms and any kind of 15th century silliness that strikes our fancy.
Contessa, may I ask
My
you a
dearest,
quick question?
I have an answer.
May I set up my armor under that?
I
ensconcement
do not have an answer because that is not ours.
until we set up the armor tent.
Yeah, I'm an ask for forgiveness person rather than permission person. So yeah, go do it. Welcome to Philosophy with the Contessa. I'm confident it should be no problem. But I still have to ask. We still have to ask Lex about setting up the pavilion for the armor. I expect that we, by which I mean the men at arms, will be set up. Okay, so now I have holes poked. You probably can't see them, but that's okay. I've got holes poked along this line, which marks the edge of where they're supposed to meet, and I've got holes here. So now we are to the sewing session. And I might just use a scary needle, since, once again, does anyone else experience needles wandering off on their own, like literally growing legs and just buggering off? This is a frequent problem, probably because I stood up and dared to stretch my legs. How dare I just accept the numbness and keep sewing? Okay, so now I have to rethread. I have to thread my needle and wax my thread. And I apparently have to find all of those things. So here is my thread. This is linen thread. Linen thread can be actually very tricky to work with for those who have not worked with it. It frays very easily and depends on how finely it's woven too, but it frays very easily. And
found a lacing ring.
Woo, yay, see? That's my grandmother's voice shouting, move things around. For those of you who've ever lost something, that is my grandmother's sage advice, move things around. And in this case, I moved myself around and found my needle. So there we go. So I'm going to thread the needle, and again, I will wax the thread. And I tend to wax the thread after I have threaded the needle, especially when it comes to linen thread, because I found that if you wax it first, it can actually sometimes get bunched up as you pull the thread through the needle, the eyelet of the needle, and then the thread shreds. Wait, that's a tongue twister. The thread shreds. Okay. So is anyone else working on any projects? Am I the only one building a headdress currently? So again, the plan for this is after I get the cone stitched together, which is about to happen imminently, it will be covered in its black silk cover, and then ultimately I'll be making a secondary cover to go over top of that. Maybe one that might be removable, thinky thoughts. And that one is going to be this beautiful pearl and gold work pattern, probably fleur-de-lis, because that is my insignia. But I haven't really gotten to seriously designing it yet, but that is the general plan. There is a fantastic portrait. Gosh, Jan van Groot, I think was the art, I think it's the Van Groot family. It's a Flemish altarpiece, and it's a diptych, and she is kneeling in her beautiful, beautiful garments. She's been given an impossibly thin waist. I mean, talk about a little bit of idealization, but her turret, her Not-A-Hennin, her headdress, has exquisite pearl work on it. And so that has inspired me to want to do a similar thing for my own. And I was recently, someone asked me, I was talking about making this secondary cover to go on top, and someone actually, oh shoot, I didn't wax. I got talking and I didn't wax. I didn't wax, Catalina. I did not wax.
You must always wax.
Must always wax. So I got thinking, she asked me if it was going to be, or she observed that a removable cover would be brilliant. And at first I said, no, I didn't mean a removable cover, but then I stopped and thought about it. Well, how brilliant is that? To make a secondary cover that can come off, and then you can have multiple covers on the same cone. You don't have to make multiple cones, multiple foundational turrets. You just have covers that you just put on depending on your outfit or your mood or the occasion. Maybe you have a more splendid one when you're going to go to court. Maybe you have a more normal one when it's just work-a-day business, right? Why couldn't that be a thing? Yes, I have no actual evidence for it, but absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Yeah, I got that right. So I'm actually tempted to experiment with this idea of a removable, replaceable cover of different ones, and then for having different options for different moods, different outfits, different occasions. Yeah. What do you all think about that idea of the removable headdress cover that allows you more flexibility on the same piece? And it also makes sense from a perspective of medieval conservation of materials, right? When materials are expensive, and even labor, while not as expensive as it might now be, it wasn't super cheap either. And also that, people, not even the aristocrats necessarily had endless space to store endless headdresses. And if you read in the inventories, when they do mention these kinds of headdresses, they don't mention a lot of them. So it does make me wonder if they didn't have a lot of them. They didn't have complete ones, but maybe they had multiple covers for them. They had one or two base items that they could then just put a replaceable cover on. So I think I'm going to pursue that, and I'm going to think about it a little more and how it might be reasonably attached so that it can be easily removed when it's time to put on another one. Now, we do know that in 15th century Florence, for instance, and in fact in other parts of Europe, they would actually sew in sleeves. So this sleeve, for instance, is sewn in. So in the morning, I might decide I want a different set of sleeves. We cut the stitches and we just quickly whip stitch another sleeve into place. That is a thing they did. People always think that those kinds of replacement sleeves were laced in. They were often sewn in. And that's because life was slower and you had servants to help with that process. And so, it was feasible and doable. Ugh, the waxes caught up a whole bunch of the linen thread. I really hate this thread so much. This particular linen thread is odious. It's just odious. So I am seriously thinking about that, about a cover that can be either quickly whip stitched into place when you want that look instead of a different look. And yeah, so I think that's probably feasible to just whip stitch it in, because I can do a line of whip stitching pretty damned quickly, honestly. Yeah, so that's a thought I had about that idea of the removable cover. And I do like it because, you know, it means I don't have to make another of these base cones. I can just make a pretty cover to go on top, and there it is. So yes, if you're watching me rewax the thread, it's because the thread did what this particular linen thread does all the time, pretty regularly. It, you know, some of the looser threads, when I pulled it through, the hole caught and piled up on each other and then caused the thread to shred. And that is what not particularly well-made linen thread will do. And I'm stubborn, I'm very stubborn in that I am going to use this damn thread. I'm not going to throw it away. Right, Kate?
We're not throwing it away.
So
now, if you dislike someone very much, you could give it to them.
Oh, wow, that's like the white elephant gift. Ooh, to give someone a bad spool of thread, especially someone who's a hoarder or who can't throw things away. Ooh, mean. Oh, prepping to make a limoncello for a brewing competition, brewing in quotes, at our late 1500 Florentine event. Oh, nice. Making it in a cordial style. That sounds interesting. Cornelia, did you find any kind of, you know, references for, I'd never occurred to me that limoncello might date back to the 15th century, or the 16th century rather. Did you actually find some interesting documentation for that? The evidence of that, how they might have made it? You know, everyone makes cordials, but I don't drink much alcohol for several reasons, one of which is I like to chew my calories. So I've never really looked that much into the production of various kinds of spirits and beverages like of that nature. So I don't even know what the evidence we have for cordial making is in the pre-modern world. I'd be very interested to hear more about that, actually. Did you see the comment about the men's journey? I did not. Could you please pop it back in so I don't have to stop what I'm doing and scroll all the way back? Sorry, these comments are coming in absolutely the wrong way. Fizzy Wizzy, thank you for that lovely comment. How is my battery holding up? Well, that's a valid question. Actually, it's only at 27. Yeah, we have 27% left, so we have a little bit before we have to panic. Oh, goodness.
After I get this one done, I will take us some lunch.
Oh, lunch, that's an idea. That's a concept. Lunch. The holes in my fingers might thank you. And other things I never thought I would say.
The holes in my fingers see the holes in your fingers.
That's right. We recognize a kindred spirit. So I've actually started the stitching on the lower part, the joint. I've anchored it there. And now I'm going to come up through the turret itself, the other side of the other edge. And I'll be able to show you then pretty quickly what I mean by it overlapping and the joint creating a very useful stiffness that will cause this to round out and not to be tear-shaped. And definitely this is something you want to do while it's from the top down, from the narrow end. Start at the narrow end and work your way down, everyone, if you are making one of these yourself. And the other nice thing about this is you can kind of do this like lacing. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the thread loose, and I'm going to come back through and maybe I'll use Kate's giant scary needle. I'm going to come back through with the second line of stitching So I'm going to do it, leave it loose like that, and then I'm going to do the counter stitching loose, and then I'll tighten it. Same technique that's used in shoemaking, actually, now that I think about it, in leather work, in other kinds of leather work. So I'm going to apply that bit of wisdom here so that it's easier to work with, rather than frustrating myself by closing it and then trying to fight with the narrow confines of the inside of the cone. If that makes sense. Did that make sense? What I just, those words just make sense? I know maybe not, you're not the best person to necessarily ask if those words made sense, but do those, because I don't know if that affects your math thing.
I wasn't listening.
Good, great, fantastic. So did that make sense, everyone who was listening? Since my bosom buddy's ignoring me. No, I'm teasing.
I have shiny lacing rings that need my attention.
Fizzy wizzy. I would say it might look tough. It's actually not tough. And the thing, so part of the challenge is that I'm making this up as I go, is I'm figuring the process out as I go. This is not a process. The process itself was not documented in the Middle Ages. How to make one of these was not documented by anyone, as far as we know. And so we have to make such items with a great deal of conjectural logic. So a lot of, a big part of the process, and what takes most of the time, is as one works along, is intellectualizing the process. It would be easier if I just straight up had a set of instructions from the 15th century and I could just follow them along, but we don't. So that is part of the process. I was talking about how, oh, thank you, chocolate Katya. I was talking about how I recently started making a 15th century men's journée and how hard I've been finding it, especially considering how little sewing experience I have. Okay, so chocolate, or chocolada, if you could, maybe when you say how hard you've been finding it, can you give me a specific example? I might be able to give you some tips. If you give me, like, I find working with this kind of thread hard, or this keeps happening. If you give me a specific concrete example of problems you've encountered, I'll be happy to try to troubleshoot them for you. Another time for me to break and say, if you've been enjoying this live stream, please like and subscribe. And if you would like to support my work and have access to extra content and extra materials, live Zoom sessions together, consider becoming a patron on Patreon, or a channel member on YouTube. Okay, so yeah. If you all have any questions, if you have any of your own sewing troubles that you've been experiencing, feel free to pop them in the live chat here. I'm happy to help you troubleshoot them. Susan says, lunch, what's that? Yeah, Susan, we kind of forget that too sometimes at these gatherings. That is why we have a Katya. We have a head cook who's amazing. And that is why we have her, because we outsource our food thinking to her normally. But she is off sourcing food. So we have to rely on our own brains to think of things like food. And that doesn't always work. And especially when we get deep in this project work, we really want to do it. We're on it, right? We're in the groove.
I'm in the zone.
We're in the zone. Did you grab your scary needle and put it back somewhere?
I don't think so.
Okay, let's see where
It does have a golden.
Let's see where the scary needle went. I've noticed that this cloth is remarkably good at hiding things.
It's vertical.
Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't have looked at it there. Excellent. Stuck vertically into the cloth. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and thread the second needle that I thankfully have because of Catalina. And now I'm going to go ahead and counter stitch the section here so that I can then just tighten it like laces eventually as we work along. That's the plan. Let's see how this works, everyone. Let's see what happens. Yeah, Cornelia says currently no, so back to the topic of limoncello. Cornelia says currently no examples that we could find of limoncello for pre-1600. Cordials were pre-1600 though. Grey Dragon website has a good record for aqua vitae in Scotland. Oh yeah, I have seen recipes for aqua vitae. I didn't realize that was a cordial. I never thought about it in that light. Yeah, Terrafon's website, greydragon.org, is excellent. It's yeah, it's tragic what happened to him, and it's sad that the site isn't being maintained anymore because he was the person who did the website. But the information that's still there is quite top notch. So I'm once again preparing to wax my hateful linen thread. And again, when you're waxing, when you're using beeswax, don't use paraffin. Don't use paraffin, don't use soy wax. What other kind of waxes do people use these days?
I have no idea.
Beeswax for the win. The original is often the best. And you want to heat it up by either breathing on it or heating it up in between your hands so that it's more supple and so that the thread will be more likely to glide through it.
Compare that to... ooh, big bug.
Ooh, hello, Daddy. It's a daddy long legs. Very long legs. Very, very long legs. Yeah, you know, the learning curve is real. So, you know, when you're hand making something, and especially if it's not something you do every day, let's say lacing rings. The first lacing ring you attach will be a little interpretive.
Dumpy.
It will be, but by the time you get towards the end of the process, your lacing rings will be beautiful. So that is what we refer to in the biz as the learning curve. It is real. The learning curve is real.
Okay. Who else is here? Who live here?
Oh, that might be Master Albrecht. I think his vehicle got fixed. Wow, everyone is coming.
Perfect stopping point.
Wow.
For Kate.
For Kate, yeah. Wow, amazing. Everyone seems to be coming earlier than anticipated. Brilliant. Welcome. You look exhausted, sir. It is a long drive. It is a very long drive. Most assuredly, it is a long drive. So I'm going to start this one on the top. It is chilly. It is. Let me see. The question.
Yeah, she's working on her Not-A-Hennin.
Yeah. The Jornea is made out of polyester damask because I wasn't willing to spin it on silk. Fair enough. The main struggle I found is trying to make the pleats as defined as some portraits show. Nothing major. Aho. Okay, so chocolata. Okay, great question. Thank you for bringing that up. Let us talk about those stiff pleats that you see in the portraits. So there is, for those who don't know, there is this Jornea. Let me see if anyone's wearing one back here. None of these men are wearing one. But the Jornea is basically like the tabard-like overgarment worn by Italian men. There's a male version and there's a female version. We're talking about the male version. Worn by Italian men starting in about the mid-15th century. And it's open on the sides. It can be belted in front and back. It can be belted just in front. It can be not belted at all. And there are two kinds. There is what I call the structured Jornea, the worked Jornea, and then there is the unstructured one. And the unstructured one is you can actually see it. There's a portrait of Giuliano de' Medici wearing an unstructured one. The structured ones, so we actually know how they're made because we have an extant Jornea that has actually survived from the tomb of Diego di Cavaniglia. And we actually have a really great depiction of a Jornea on the ground that actually shows tape on the back, a strip of tape at two levels, along the bottom and along the top, tacked at regular intervals, which would force the pleats to hang the way they're supposed to. And Diego di Cavaniglia's Jornea has the same thing. And Diego di Cavaniglia's Jornea is additionally shows evidence of wool padding on the inside to make it have that structure, the rounded structure. So often it's a question, if you want to have those structured pleats, it seems you need to have two things. One, you actually need to add an extra layer of wool to the inside of in between the lining and the shell. And then two, you need those tapes on the inside, like the tape that's holding my hair, the linen tape. You need the linen tape on the inside at the upper level and then at the lower level, like 4 or 5 inches up from the bottom of the hem. and then you'll get that structured. And there's also evidence of stuffing the channels themselves as well. There's some evidence in Diego di Cavaniglia's Jornea that the channels were actually stuffed on the inside. And there's a garment in Aachen Cathedral's treasury called the shirt of the tunic of the Virgin, right? And that garment actually has rolled pleats, the really structured pleats. They're stuffed with linen and they're actually whip stitched on the backside. So you can't just, you will not get that really structured pleating from it just hanging. You actually need to add some extra layers and the tape on the back. Yep. Piku, hello, welcome. Okay, let me just check the comments. The guy in green is wearing a jornea. No, that is not a jornea. That's a robe, R-O-B-E. Not a jornea. This is French clothing behind me, not Italian. Yep. I remember watching your video, but it appears as if I didn't quite understand. Thank you so much for clearing things. Oh, yeah, chocolat. Maybe go back and check out that video again, because I do talk about, in that video, I do talk about exactly that, and I show the pictures and everything. So yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for asking that, or thank you for feeling safe that this is a safe enough space to express your frustrations, because I hear you. I hear you. I haven't had a chance to experiment with any of those stiffening methods yet, or those structuring methods yet, but I'm very much looking forward to doing so in a new jornea for my condottiero. So yeah, I am now, for those just joining, I am making a Not-A-Hennin, a turret, the 15th century conical headdress, so iconic of medieval fashion, even if it only was worn very briefly. And I am now doing the counter stitching on the upper part, and I'm just going to pull these threads tight once I finish this row of counter stitching here. That's the theory anyway. We'll see how it works, eh? When conjectural sewing projects for the win. Okay. Yeah, we were supposed to have today all to ourselves, but many people have decided to show up today, which is fine. It's I'm always happy for more people, so it's not a big deal. Okay, so continuing onward from here. Let's see, go up to here. It was 100% me not listening enough. If this version works correctly, I might move on to using silk damask or brocade, but that's only if things go well, because this stuff is so expensive. Yeah, so chocolat, 1,000,000%. Absolutely, I agree wholeheartedly with the idea that you should only move on to the silk damask if you feel that you've got the technique down. And that is why I have not moved on to the beautiful silk damask that I have to make, that I bought 15 years ago to make a new Burgundian gown, because I'm not happy yet with the Burgundian gown pattern. But I cut the new one out of this amazing silky black wool, and I'm working on that. And if it comes together well, I will then use that new pattern on the silk damask that I bought all those years ago. It's a replica 15th century pattern. It's the same pattern as for my big Burgundian belt that you all have maybe seen. And yeah, 100% understand the concept of, well, I'm not going to actually use the really good fabric until I feel like I've gotten this technique down. No quibbles from me on that score. Not that you asked for my approval or anything, but I understand and fully support that approach. Okay, so I'm now going to work on tightening this down. Pulling these threads together. We'll see how this works in practice. The theory was a good one. We'll see if it actually works with this crappy, hateful linen. I think I'm maybe just going to try pulling one set of thread at a time. Okay. Okay, now the second set of thread. Sorry, everyone, I'm focusing on this because this is a new technique. I've never done this before. I've never done it with this before, and I've never done it with this crappy linen thread. So we're learning some things, maybe. We'll see. Because it kind of gets stuck in these holes a little bit. It's not, if I might, honestly. So here's my tip for this. Don't use linen thread, use silk thread. The linen thread is a little too maybe friable for this. This is me being punished for false economy about not wanting to throw away the linen thread or otherwise dispose of it in some other way. That's on me, clearly. It wouldn't surprise me if it ends up fraying and just snapping entirely because it's just, well, there it is. So yeah, lesson learned, use silk thread to do this, not crappy friable. Now there are better linen threads out there. Don't misunderstand me. Some of you might be screaming, but linen thread is good. It can be. This is not the good linen thread. Honestly, I don't even know where this linen thread came from. Isn't that fun? It appeared in my collection of thread one year. I don't know whence it came. And now I'm beginning to think that it was sent to me by evil fairies. So there's that. Oh my goodness. Very, very fussy. Unfortunately, when I did the counter stitching through it, it seems to have tangled into itself, tangled through the alternate thread instead of just going cleanly through. So now that I'm trying to tighten it, it's fighting me in every way it possibly can. And of course, that thing of bunching up and fraying is starting to happen now that I'm pulling it through the holes. So that's also fun. Highly amusing. Well, if I have to redo the whole thing, if I have to redo it, then lesson learned. If I don't have to redo it, then great. And it's all part of the journey. It's all part of the journey of recreating historical garments, is figuring out these key little lessons learned. Like, don't use hateful linen thread. Use lovable living thread or loving linen thread, but not hateful. This is hateful linen thread. Very hateful linen thread. I really do it. I feel like this is some kind of curse that's been cast upon my house or something. Yeah, there's no way I can actually tighten this down all the way. It's so tangled up in itself, in and around itself. Okay, well, that might be a good stopping point for me because I'm just going to have to redo this, and I'm going to redo it. I'm going to redo it with silk thread. Okay, right. So it is indeed lunchtime in any case. Let me see. Pierce the thread, probably need to pull it tighter. Yeah, need to pull it tighter sooner. Okay, so everyone, are there any, let me show you the progress so far then to bring you up to speed. We have finished the band, the reinforcing band around the brim there. It's actually kind of getting a little bright and I might need to go put on more sunblock. The brand, getting around the band, I've reinforced the band here with the reinforcing pieces of vellum, the part that will go around the head. I started trying to actually bring it together, and I guess you can kind of at least get an idea for what I'm going for here, because it is a little tight there. And then we're at the final stage for the structure anyway, for the interior structure of connecting it. And then we'll put the cover on. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut all this and redo it in silk thread because, yeah, you want thread that's not going to turn into a knotted mess, which you can kind of see there. Yeah. Isn't that mess beautiful? Yep. Okay, well, does anyone have any questions? In the meanwhile, I would like to thank all of my patrons and my channel members for supporting my work. If you would like to support my work, if you're enjoying this content and would like to see me continue making it and you are in a position to do so, feel free to become a patron or a channel member. And there are lots of extra perks for doing so. Extra content, early release of content, Zoom sessions together. So lots of benefits to membership and a Discord. We have a private Discord server for my members, channel members, and my patrons. And I think I'm going to have to find that needle. That was an important needle. It was my last good needle. No. Oh, well. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, joining me for this particular medieval sewing party. We'll probably be doing another one, and we're going to be doing a medieval dance party in a little bit. So stay tuned for that fun. Otherwise, have a lovely afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are in the world. And if you're watching this as a recording, feel free to pop your questions in the comments and I will get to them. And if you had a question and I didn't answer it, pop it in the comments after the video post and I will see it and I will answer it. Thank you all so much for joining me today for this lovely, lovely afternoon of medieval creativity and reconstruction, reproduction, recreation. Until later, everyone, stay creative.